This is Jannis, a German entrepreneur who has built thousands of AI agents. In this podcast, we talk about why voice agents are the future, why AGI is nowhere near, and how anyone can start building voice agents. This is the David Ondrej podcast. Enjoy. Real quick, I'm hiring a backend developer to help me build Vectel. So if you have 5+ years of experience, make sure to apply. The link is below the video. So Jannis, you believe the next evolution of AI agents are voice agents. Why is that?
Well, they're the most powerful representation of ourselves. And I guess probably this year we're going to see them being really indistinguishable from an actual human being.
Okay.
So simply imagine the way we talk, right?
Yeah.
You have a voice AI that can talk in a similar way.
So how will people use voice agents on the day-to-day? Like, can you clear that up?
For us in general, voice is probably the fastest way of communicating with technology, right? Imagine instead of just texting something and trying to figure out things yourself, you call up your voice agent and it does the stuff for you. This is the full power. So you have the whole agentic system, or maybe even a whole set of employees behind you that are all AI-based, and they can do things for you without you doing them manually.
So it sounds like every single business and person will need them, right? And
yeah,
it's actually
100%.
It's actually what you're doing. Like you're building,
Exactly.
That's how you make money. You build AI agents, voice AI for businesses. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, we're using them ourselves in our business, right? So I think just like 2 weeks ago, we took our first agent live that is now our digital employee.
Okay.
And simply imagine, I'm just talking to my Telegram bot. I say, hey, I need a new post. OpenAI released XYZ. It's that information. I'll send you the resource URL. Check it out and please create a post for my community and share it with my network. And it basically does the ideation, it creates the posts, it posts and publishes them themselves and then asks if everything is okay. And I can correct it if I want to. And this
amazing.
is all done by AI, right, without me touching it.
So later in the video, we'll actually break down how anyone can sell voice AI to real businesses. But first, you mentioned you deployed the first AI employee. So can you touch on that a bit? Because that's a fascinating concept.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very careful if it comes to deploying AI agents in my own business.
Yeah.
Which is mainly because there are so many variables. For AI, at least at the point we are right now, you want to have some sort of system or some sort of repetitive task that happens over and over again, where you can just see a pattern of repetitiveness. And that is one of the things that I noticed, because I update my community and anyone around it with news about what's happening in the voice AI space. And I was doing that manually. This is a thing I do all the time. Why not just outsource that to an employee? So you basically build up this AI agent that can find the idea or see the idea. It can research it, do deep research. It packages properly to whatever social media network you post it on, and then just does it for you, right? So it's basically just everything that I don't want to have control of because it's repetitive. I'll just outsource it to the AI. And that's all done by just a single message.
So this is becoming possible in real time, right? Like even like a year ago, that probably wasn't possible, or at least the voice models were not as good as they are today, right? So what would you say is like the best AI model for voice agents, both on the LLM side and both on the text-to-speech side?
Yeah, it's a very good point, and it's changing rapidly. Like it's insane how quickly it changes, to be honest. And if it comes to the LLM model, I would say it's probably not even that important. Okay. It really depends a bit on the functionality, what it should do. And it becomes critical if it comes to like advanced reasoning, meaning if you have certain tool calls, so features that the AI should do or should be able to do. And if you have a lot of them, you need some good model. And in that case, it would be something like OpenAI 4.0 or 4.1. Generally, the more important thing is the voice. Like, same like we are talking right now. If I sound robotic, it would probably be a lot more boring, right? Yeah. So having some sort of functionality that allows you to resonate with the other person. And that might not just be the value that you give. Like 11 Labs was already okay back then or good back then. The problem is you don't have the connection between the emotion, like the emotional intelligence, how we call it with voice AI. And that's a big disconnect because everything that happens inside of the orchestration layer, that's how we call it with voice AI. You send in information, like you speak something, it's being transcribed to text, and at that point, it loses all of the emotional knowledge, right? You lose so many nuances. It's being sent to the LLM, and then something comes back. There's basically just no emotional connection. And now we're at the stage where a lot of companies try to change that. And these companies, they find just really, really nice methods. I'm not going to go into the technical deep depth, but they find really nice methods of combining what you speak with the emotion that you have, try to put it into some sort of number and send it through the web, and it can be decoded on the other side. So if you say you feel sad, the AI can now understand it and can react towards that. And that's going to be the future of 2025, specifically emotional intelligence, which becomes just such a massively big market.
Yeah, that unlocks so many different use cases, right? Like therapist, or maybe like you send the same message to your personal voice AI agent, but you could sound angry or you could sound like, chill. And both can have like very different meaning, right?
Exactly.
So those like, I guess, tokenizing the emotion is very, very huge breakthrough, I would say.
Yeah, it is, exactly. It also gives more value to a specific message, right? Which wasn't the case until now.
So voice, I think, is the modality of the future, at least the near future, until we have neural links and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because, as you said, it's so fast, right? It's natural. Everybody can speak at like, 200, 300 words per minute, while most people can type like 40, 50, right? So unless you're like one of the fastest typing people in the world, voice is probably faster. However, you cannot speak in like everywhere, like in public, stuff like that. Do you think this would be a bottleneck, or do you think that'll be solved as well? If you want to build your own AI startup, or if you want to start any business with AI, make sure to join the New Society. It's going to be a link below. Here we have step-by-step workshops on how to build your first AI agents, how to monetize it. So again, if you're serious about the AI, make sure to join the New Society. It's going to be a link below.
I mean, it's kind of being solved already. I just heard you have Whisper installed as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can whisper into it, right? So you basically try to just change the way you talk by just like whispering into something.
Okay.
Makes it easier in some environments to communicate. That's right. If you're in like a library or something, you don't want to scream around. So whispering would be probably one of the options. And I see we probably even have more attachments. Or let's say you just send a single message. You just say something you want without really defining it. And then you have an AI calling another AI, if you want that, to basically do all the rest, right? It's just, you just need to say what you want, and the rest can be ideated by AI.
I think this is like a really powerful idea. Like everybody can imagine going on a walk and just like, 10-minute, 15-minute walk, talking to the AI agent and just saying like, okay, I need to do this, I need to send that email, need to pay that invoice, we need to get started on this video. And you're just like giving these commands, and then the AI agent, the main voice agent, delegates to specialized agents, right? And like you come back and you got like 8 hours worth of work done from a 10-minute walk outside, which is just maybe a casual walk to start your day. So I think we need to like, can you give us more of these like real ideas where, most people, they're busy day to day, they don't have time to think about the future, maybe like we do. What are some of the most like concrete things you believe? Do you think everybody will have, 30 plus agents working for them? How do you think the future will look like?
It's a very tricky topic because we see everything evolutionizing so quickly in so many different aspects. Though I do believe that we're going to have some sort of AI employee army behind us in one way or the other. I mean, you've probably seen the advancement with MCP and A2A.
Yeah.
And I believe that A2A comes, and it's probably going to be some sort of future. If it's not A2A, something else.
Yeah.
But the goal is to allow this interoperability between agents. And that's kind of like the massive thing, which we don't really have right now. So if it comes to right now, I would probably say if you have like a stream or like a process that is repetitive, that you do over and over again, you can already automate this with AI agents, and it's pretty decent. However, the flexibility that we have at this stage of having these AI agents behind your, let's say, master agent that you just communicate with, it's very vague because the definitions and the standard is not there yet. That's what we're currently trying to establish. And that is one of the biggest things, because the standard itself, as it is right now, in my opinion, it's not as functional and as powerful because a lot of things are missing. So if we see it in the future, I think the next thing that probably comes is state management. Okay. Imagine your agents have sessions and they can store temporary information and can pass that along. That's going to be the next step of actually making sure that the information that it passes along from tasks is going to be better and like more stable. And I think that's the time when we actually see the first real use cases of a more general AI that we can leverage without defining these repetitive tasks, but actually let it just do whatever it wants to do.
So isn't OpenAI already doing that with Assistance API?
In some way, yes, yeah. But imagine this between different agents. So not just a single assistant. We don't just talk about tools. We talk about the agent actually being able to talk to another agent who can talk to other agents. So you basically build up a full team that has access to like your whole enterprise tech stack to do things. But the problem is you have to imagine like a single agent, you need to give them some sort of capabilities, right? The tools. Yeah. So if you have a tool like Zapier or Make.com, you can have 1,000 integrations.
Yeah.
Now imagine you have a single request from your AI agent, but it has access to 1,000 different things. It can solve the problem in so many different ways that would cause a lot of issues. It probably has more features available than it needs, which causes confusion, hallucinations, potentially data output that is not as good. And until we haven't figured out how to like templatize it within the AI, so the AI being able to actually find patterns and pathways, it's going to be very hard for us to templatize that and actually make sure we use an agent in a way that would actually work with what we're trying to achieve. So there's something called process mining. It's made by the company, like the company that owns Make.com, Zelonis.
Yeah.
And they basically try to do that. So if you would work something on your computer and you try to figure out, or you just have like a workflow that you do every day, and you maybe don't even understand which things are repetitive, which not, Celonis basically monitors what you do, and can see the patterns, and it can show them visually to you. And I think something like that probably is going to happen with agents. We can potentially have some sort of software that can actually monitor what agents do and how well they do it, and then basically just report back if something is going to work out or not. So we basically give them active feedback, like a normal human, and say, oh yeah, good, you have actually done this task well, that's good, or this one is not so good, try to do something else. And by just finding those patterns, I think we dynamically just find those pathways and train our own agents in a multi-agent network to actually do tasks efficiently for us in a way that we actually need them.
Yeah, because so much of the context is unsaid, right? Like, people don't realize just how much information is by listening or feeling or touching, right? Like, if you think about it, a baby in the first 10 years of life, all it does is like interacts with the world and just, gets so many tokens into their head, like by falling, by loud noise, stuff like that, right? And all of that stuff currently is not in the models. Same with why current AI is nowhere near as good as a remote worker, right? Nobody can like phrase it really well, but there are like multiple different ways, long context, stuff like that.
Yep.
But just understanding physics and basics of, how the computer works, how the web browser works, how other humans think, those things are not really that well tokenized compared to text. So I think, as you said, like monitoring people's workflows, and obviously there has to be like privacy issues, stuff like that. But if you do it for yourself, if you screen record your own process and train that with some open source stuff, I think that's very powerful because there is going to be a lot of, it's like vector embeddings. You cannot really describe it. It's like thousands of dimensions, right? Same is going to be with tokens, with AI agents.
It's the same with like machine learning. We had this whole thing. If you know about hidden layers and the way they're trained, it's very, very similar to what we have right now with synapses, right? If we learn something in our process and we get a good output, like the proteins just strengthen around that connection, they become thicker, which means we give them more priority. It's kind of the same thing what we see now again on not just in the ML layer, so we've already had this in machine learning, but now we also see this again in the agents, where we have the same process. So it's going to be very interesting, and I think it's going to come.
Do you think like the web will change, or do you think the AI agents will learn how to use the websites?
They already know how to use the websites, right? I think it's more like a...
But do you think like every website will have like a API just for AI agents? Like, a human version and the AI agent version?
I would not say the websites, I would more say the tools. Okay. So any kind of services that you want to have an AI talk to, or where it can get information. Because we build scrapers, right? You can build scrapers, they can just see any kind of website. Especially given the standards we have right now. Like if they're not behind a paywall or behind a hidden setup, it's very, very easy for an AI or any technology to scrape that information from the site. So in that sense, I don't think there needs to be a specific integration, but anything that has utility or where we need to talk to, like your CRM, your accounting software, etc., they're probably going to have the MCP server. They maybe have the A2A server that we just integrate and then can automate things with each other.
So I think we both believe that every single company will be using voice AI sooner than later. Can you give some concrete examples for people watching of like some of the most common ways you've seen companies use voice agents?
Well, voice agents, I say there are three main things or three specific use cases that always stand out, and they work mainly throughout any kind of industry. That's lead reactivation, customer support, and lead qualification. These three kind of always work, nevertheless, the industry. And it's one of the easiest cases to implement, in our opinion. And you see that as well, that they are now, especially like the last year, everything was about figuring out how voice agents work, which tech stack actually is good. Now we're seeing the time where people start building SaaS for a specific niche. So they've identified maybe lead reactivation. So we've run campaigns where we made the client $500,000 from like, I don't know, maybe 20, 30,000 calls. So it is super lucrative for them. The thing is now, once you identify that and you have the data, you can just niche down. You can build it out as a, let's say, maintained service. And then you can basically just build that into a SaaS, right? And make a lot of money. And that's what the whole market is moving towards right now.
Like if you were someone starting out, right? You see the opportunity of voice AI. How would you get started in this?
Well, the first thing we always tell our students is understand your existing knowledge. Do you have any kind of industry-specific knowledge? Do you understand the pain points? Because that's what most people are struggling with. Actually seeing a viable product or a need for it where the customer has pain or where they could make more money, right? Understanding that is the main thing. So let's say in worst case, you don't know anything. You just left university. You have zero knowledge about anything. What to do? We have Google. We can just use AI. We can do deep research. Just ask it, which company or which industry has pain points about what? Do they use phone calls? It can search this whole thing for you. It can get you the information. It's nowadays so easy to get data. And having that you know what pain points you have, and then it's not about you marketing voice AI, it's you marketing the problem or the pain point.
Yeah.
Right? And if you just shoot it out to any kind of clients, you try it with cold emailing, you just try direct outreach, you leverage your network. People say it's so hard to do outreach. You leverage your network. You can get your first couple of clients from that, and we've seen it as well. So if you do that, it's very, very easy to get started. And everything you need then is just data. Like we always say, in God we trust, for the rest we have data. It's like one of my favorite phrases, and it's just super true, because you build a solution, you see how well it works, you gather the data, and then you have actionables. You save them, let's say, 1,000 hours a month on call volume. How much is that compared to the effort that you would need to put into a human for doing the same thing? How much would it cost? You just calculate that up and you can compare it and then see actually how much value you bring them on like a yearly basis. And from that, you just take a small percentage and you can really package an amazing offer.
So I think the main thing you said, the first step is solving a real problem, right?
Correct.
So many new beginners, new entrepreneurs, doesn't matter if it's AI or other niches, they like to think of a business idea or some fancy solution, but instead they should be looking at problems that people are willing to pay for, right? Like
Correct.
What are the real pain points in that industry or in that business, and then packaging the solution not as like this is a fancy AI whatever, but we will solve your problem. This is what you're gonna get, X, Y, Z. How's that valuable for you? Like if you say to a company you're gonna save you 500 hours a month, there are a few companies that are gonna say no,
Yeah, but the thing is, I would bet a lot of people say no to that, because that's what I've seen many do. They just say, I save you X amount of time, or our thing helps you to automate your business.
But if you
so
say that in a vague way, right? If you give them like specifics.
Exactly. And that's just exactly the thing where you need the data for, where you need to understand it, right? I can always say, I automate businesses and help them to save time, cost, and
but if your cold email like describes exactly the process, and you like the person reading the email can understand like this guy knows what he's talking about, he has hundreds of hours in this industry, then it's hard to say no.
Yeah, exactly. I can give you a specific use case. So let's see, for example, with dental offices. Okay, dental, let's say ignore HIPAA compliance for now. It's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
But people in a dental office, they always have a direct connection with the front desk. So let's say the front desk, they take calls, they maybe set appointments, they maybe tell something about the services, some very basic things. Now, understanding that is great. The problem is, how do you market that? Now, first, I've seen a lot of people trying to say, we're going to replace the humans and get it out and basically implement the voice AI solution, make you more money, blah, blah, blah. The thing is, they don't even want that. They have such a good relation with the front desk. It's like family. So if you tell them, look, I can help your employee be happier because we remove all of the anger and the repetitiveness from phone calls, they can focus on things they're more interested in, they are better at, they can thrive at, and it makes them happier. Try to beat that. It's impossible. It's like really, really hard.
Yeah,
you know these insights, right? And they will be so powerful for marketing things.
Also I think that like, speaking of replacing employees, that's a very risky strat, right? Because a lot of business owners, actually, they enjoy their team, right? You can say like maybe like some big company that's like 12 layers, then the CEO doesn't care. But if you're talking like small, medium-sized businesses, I think that's a very risky like email to say like we can replace half of your employees, right? Most people are not going to have a good reaction to that email.
Yeah, and it's also not the clients you want to attract.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about agentic employees. Is that actually a thing?
We implemented one right now, right? So kinda is. I'd say it's still like in the baby footsteps, mainly for the reason because there's a lot of variability. You want to always have some sort of control, and it makes it fairly hard if you have a complex tech stack or you try to do a really complex task. So our little AI agent, it can interact with 5 different platforms. It can ideate things. It can create things. And the only reason I took it live is because I monitored it for 3 weeks or so, like a long time. And it performed really well. And I would say anything that's above like 95% success rate, for me, that's a win. And that is something I would say, okay, you can implement it. But again, for that, you need data. So coming to like whole agentic systems right now, it's coming. I'll see it coming more and more. And I first see it coming for SaaS providers. So if you look at Google, if you look into anything that already has a SaaS, they know obviously what their people want. So for them, it's easy to see the repetitive tasks that happen in mostly any kind of business. So for them, they can build agentic systems for that. But let's say on a level like Zapier or Make, where we integrate with different systems, it's not there yet.
I think GPT 4.1 is actually a huge step in the right direction because from my experience, it's by far the best at instruction following. Like the prompts, if there's something that's even slightly off, it will follow that. So it's like very literal. Obviously, 1 million context window is also great.
Yeah.
Is your experience the same with GPT 4.1?
Yeah, we switched mostly all of our clients to 4.1. However, I've heard some of my devs say that in some cases, 4.0 is better. Like I haven't really validated that, but it's something I still got to look into. And I guess it maybe has to do with the way tool calls are set up, or potentially even just the way we prompt things, right? If you compare how you prompt for, let's say, 3.5, and then you compare that to 3.0, it's a completely different way of how you need to interact with AI. So, and this is the same kind of with any model that goes out, basically. It's trained on a different set of data. It probably needs a different kind of input. So yeah, it's for us basically just trialing, figure out what works. But so far, in my opinion, I like 4.1 a lot more.
Yeah, I had to change a bunch of my prompts in Vectel because it was like following some sentences literally. Yeah. I was like, oh, wow, like it's really good to almost, being kind of annoying because, if you talk to a human and you say something like slightly off, the human will probably say, okay, he doesn't mean this exactly. But this model is like so trained to follow instructions. I mean, they didn't even put it into ChatGPT. They just made it for developers, right? So Correct. To the point of like, you have to be very clear with your prompts. And I think it's going to be like with each major model, we're going to have to like change the prompting slightly, 3.5, close 3.5 to 3.7. 3.7 was just completely unlocked. Like it just did too much, right? You had to, at least in the early days, you had to say like, do not do anything else after any instruction you give it. So I think this is going to be the case where each model release will come with like some prompt package or like personality recommendation, how people should use it. But yeah, it's very nice to see like longer context windows plus more instruction following. Yeah. I think that's going to be huge for...
Exactly. And I mean, we have the extra parameters as well that we can test with, like top P, top K, etc. Yeah. Temperature, you can do so many things.
Yeah, for sure. So someone wants to get into voice AI right now. What are the best platforms or tools for building voice agents?
Really depends on the level of expertise you have in like a tech space. Yeah. So I'd say if it's completely non-technical and you don't want to have anything to do with even JSON or something, there are things like Synthflow where you can build very basic voice agents or maybe even go high level. The problem with this is they're good for a very minority and if you don't value the success criteria that much. So in my opinion, they are good for understanding how voice agents work. You get a hang on how to interact with them, how to create them. The problem is because you don't have such a granular control of how they work, that the actual output, so the success valuation, is lower. So you have a less success rate, mainly because you're limited. So if you have at least a bit of technical knowledge, and that's what we recommend our people, try something like Retail or WAPI. It's a bit more of a technical approach, but if you don't need to know any kind of coding, it's more like you want to understand how the web works. Have to know about requests, what is a JSON construct maybe, and that basically helps you understand how services communicate, which I think anyways is going to be standard knowledge at some point. That helps you to really get into the gist of voice agent and the depth of building really powerful agents that actually have a success rate above like 90%.
Yeah, I think this is one of the biggest limiting beliefs of people new to AI. They're scared of anything technical or anything that involves code. Even if you can do like 95% of it without code, and then the last part you can just ask O3 to write the code.
Correct.
They just avoid it. Can you talk about that? Like, why are so many people scared of anything technical?
Because it looks overwhelming for the brain. If we look at it and we see weird lines, we don't even try to understand it. And they probably also know that it has a higher error rate. So you need to debug things, right? That's a big issue. That's also a big issue why with like these no-code builders like Lovable or Bolt.new or Replit agents, where you can build whole websites. It sounds good in the first place. You can really ideate quickly, get something up. But then when it comes to the nitty-gritty and you try to change maybe one specific thing, it can completely mess it up. And that's when everyone loses temper and track. So if we come to voice agents, and especially what I mentioned with WAPI and Retail, you need to understand that there's a difference between structural data and coding. Coding is where you give instructions, while what we call JSON kind of looks like a bit like code, but it's basically just a way of us wrapping information in a specific way so that technology can understand it.
Yeah.
It's basically our English version to technology. And it's a very straightforward thing that is not that complicated to learn, honestly. It's way, way easier to learn than any kind of language. And familiarizing yourself with that will just help you. And it makes things a lot easier down the way. And since it's such a low investment, I would not even compare that with coding. And that's kind of just the switch that I try to make clear to people that, look, this has nothing to do with code. You don't ever need to learn that. If you want to code, there's a whole different thing. There are so many people out there that are really, really good with coding, like Dave Abelard, have amazing courses about it. So you can get into that stuff. But that's not even something we touch because it's not even relevant. Like I say, when we build voice agents, we build them because we want to solve a problem. We want to bring value. And for that, you don't necessarily need to code.
Especially with tools like O3, right? Like ChatGPT with O3 is insane. It has been trained to do tool calling in its reasoning. It can analyze images. It can do web search, reason about the results, do another web search. Like there is few errors, I think, in these beginner workflows that O3 couldn't solve. So I think people are just scared for no reason, and especially if they are willing to pay $20 a month for ChatGPT Plus and actually use O3, I think they can get much further than they realize. A lot of that is like perceived friction that, it looks scary, as you said, but it's actually when you get started, you'll get further than you thought.
Yeah, 100%, exactly. Even if you look at it, like, there's something called E2B, I'm not sure if you know about it.
No.
Okay, imagine it's basically some sort of executor for AI written code. So LLMs use it a lot. So like you say, they have tools available, right? They can call code. Imagine now your AI tries to calculate something or tries to use a function. It can basically just generate a temporary function. It can send it to a service like E2B, which executes that code for it and returns something. So AI itself can basically already write code by itself and use it by itself. So we as a human, we don't even need to touch it. It's just super powerful. Same thing with Cursor. I still believe that people should use Cursor, even if they have no idea about coding, because you have all the agents built in by default, and you can even just use it for data formatting, for understanding things. It's like a local LLM. Super, super powerful. Even
like writing, if you're writing some journaling or documents, the prediction is insane. Like yesterday, I was changing 2 commands of just like how to, run a mobile emulator. And I was swapping, because it was a list of 3 commands with like end. And I was swapping it, and it recognized that I wanted to swap the next line, even though I haven't mentioned it, and it renamed it to Android because I was writing the iOS command, and I just pressed enter, and it predicted I want to do one for Android. I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive. And again, this is not even coding, it's just pressing tab inside of Cursor.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think people who don't use these tools, who aren't willing to pay subscription there, I think they're missing out. And also, what I hate is like people looking for the free open source alternatives, and they use like some 8 billion model instead of using the cutting edge for literally $20 a month.
Yeah, exactly. Amazing. It makes so much sense, future-proof as well. I mean, look at MCP, it's integrated with MCP.
Yeah.
It's such a big game changer.
So can you give us like a few tech concepts that you think everyone should learn? You mentioned JSON. What are some others?
Yeah, JSON is probably... I would put JSON even like a little bit lower down the line. Okay. The most important thing for me is probably request.
Okay.
Understand what a request is, what an API is, and what a webhook is. Like about the API webhook thing, I have a video that explains it pretty well, so I'm not going to go into that. You can lose yourself. But a request itself, like if you open a website in your browser, you send a request. You request something from somewhere else, which is like a server usually, that retrieves information and sends it back to you. An API, that's what you see anywhere in the web. Like you talk about API, blah, blah, blah. You see, it's the same thing. You send a request, but now instead of you getting a visual website back, you receive a JSON. You receive this structured data information that another technology stack can use. And this is just the way how they talk. So understanding requests is the first thing. And when you use requests, you will understand different content types. You will understand things like JSON. You maybe will learn a bit about XML, even though I hope you don't. And understanding like the body, payload, and header. It's always the same structure. It's just an interaction somewhere else. So that's probably one of the biggest one. If it comes to voice AI, I would generally say terms like orchestration layer. What is an orchestration layer? What is STT? Text to speech, speech to text, etc.
So can you like go deeper into these voice AI concepts?
Yeah, 100%. So speech to text, like it says, we talk something, it's being transcribed somewhere to text, and then we can use it as text, right? So OpenAI has like the Whisper model. DeepGram is a big one that Vapi and Rita work with. And the main goal with it is have the first step of what we call the voice AI system, because the voice AI system itself is the orchestration layer, right? So it's probably a better example if I give it to that. So if we say the voice orchestration layer is our AI, I talk something, it uses speech to text to translate it to text. That text is being sent to an LLM, so a large language model like OpenAI. In that brain, something happens. It will basically try to get out some sort of reasoning and send you a response back. And that response is then being used by text to speech, being translated again into speech that is being sent back to us. And this whole thing happens in a few milliseconds on a different tech stack. And this is kind of like the whole perspective of what you currently need in the state where we are for making voice AI possible. But that's something that's changing.
Okay, so what exactly is changing?
The tech stack is moving because we talked in the beginning about the emotional intelligence.
So we're removing like the translation to text and we're going like the multimodal tokens basically.
Correct. We need to remove a couple of things. We need to remove the translation to text and from text to speech as well. So we need to have that all in a best case like a multimodal experience.
Yeah.
So in that case, instead of us translating things to text, we translate it to some random numbers. And there are different methods for doing so. Like you mentioned earlier, tokens. That is basically then being sent to the LLM, and the LLM can interpret these tokens, with a more emotional meaning or whatever it deems is relevant, and can send back tokens, which are then just being, again, transferred to the actual voice. So in that case, we just don't lose anything. It's the same when someone is mad or cries and texts a WhatsApp message. The other side never really knows whether or not they mean it's sarcastic or if they actually said, etc. Right? So we lose all of that information. And by that, we are slowly now, after 1 year of having this orchestration layer, we're now slowly moving towards having some sort of orchestration layer that doesn't involve text to speech and speech to text anymore.
So in the new society, just yesterday, one of our members sold his MVP, the minimal viable product of his app, for $90,000. So if any of you are wondering, can I make money with AI apps or with vibe coding apps or with building my own AI startup? This post by John should answer your question. So if you want to start your own AI startup, or if you just want to start making money with AI, make sure to join the new society, because in the classroom, we have step-by-step modules on how to build your first AI agent, as well as how I build my own AI startup from scratch, from literally choosing the video idea to setting up the project in Cursor, the backend in Python, all the way to crossing the $10,000 a month mark with my startup. So if you're serious about AI, and if you want to make some real money, like John, one of our members, make sure to join the new society. It's going to be linked below the video. One more thing you mentioned that I want to touch on is that chatbots will write code without the user even knowing, right? Because you can do so much with code, but to the typical person on the internet, that's scary, right? But with code, like you can call custom APIs, you can create custom functions, run experiments, get those results, but the user in most cases won't even know that the AI has written code. So I think that's like a very fascinating concept.
Yeah, and I don't think we really need to learn it anymore so much. I mean, in the end, it's all specs, it's documented somewhere. So if you train an AI, let's say just on Python or just on any kind of programming language, it can use it probably better than anyone else. So yeah, and the thing is with AI, what we see now with things like E2B, where we have some code interpreter that AI can talk to, it's just super powerful. The thing is, it cannot really deal with complex things. It's always like smaller little snippets, but it can calculate things, and it can calculate them a lot more accurately than just relying on AI itself.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a super powerful thing. And I do see all of that play into what we would consider an agent later down the line.
So speaking of coding, would you recommend people to learn if someone is like looking into it, right?
Yeah.
2025, do you think it's good or do you think it's a waste of time?
It really depends how much you want it and what the intentions are. I think if you are intended of really, like if you enjoy developing and you really like it, you're going to have potential to actually make something with this. Because in the end, you still need some sort of logic to do certain things. And some systems, especially at the position we are right now, they're very outdated. So you probably can even develop protocols. You can really dive deep into code and learn and use it for yourself. However, if your motivation is money, for example, you probably don't want to do that. There are way better ways on investing the time.
Yeah, I think that's a good heuristic. If someone has like the natural inclination for, logic and math and stuff like that, then probably it's a good idea. But if someone is like not technical at all, they don't like it, they're more of a social person, for example, then it's like forcing, water to flow uphill.
Yeah, exactly.
There are much better ways to, make a living.
Yeah, especially now what we see with vibe coding and everything, right?
Yeah.
There are so many studies being done that any kind of vibe coded stuff is a lot more insecure because people just don't know how to use it. They don't know how to secure a server. We've seen applications being deployed that don't even use Nginx. You can just access the web server in a browser. It's crazy, but yeah, people don't know.
But then there is the other extreme of people that completely hate on vibe coding and say it's useless when, people like me literally build startups that make like 5 figures a month with vibe coding. Obviously, just vibe coding isn't going to get you there and it's going to result in security issues. And I had to consult with, real programmers to help me secure my app, but it will get you so much further than otherwise. So even though like it's not, perfect, I would still encourage people to look into it rather than like trying to dismiss it because I don't know, I just see so much negativity of like, vibe coding is completely useless if you're not a senior developer. That's just not true.
It's not true. You learn a lot from it and you can definitely use it for learning. And honestly, I'm a massive fan as well of it for one reason, which is learning the high level of a specific topic. I'm a massive fan of, even let's say you're not technical at all, that you at least understand the basics on how technology works. I like to teach that to anyone. It's always good to understand the high level of something because it allows you to leverage it. Maybe not for yourself, but at least if you hand something over to a developer and you want a software being built, if you understand at least the basics on the top level, you know what you need to tell them. You also know what needs to come back as a feedback. If you don't know that, you always tap in the blue and they can take advantage of you. They maybe build something that's not working that well. And that counts for any kind of area in business. It's not just about coding itself.
Yeah, I think that learning element is really huge. I think that's what separates the people who get mediocre results with vibe coding and those who can actually build something lasting. Because if you really just shut off your brain and only like accept, you're not gonna get anywhere. You know,
Yeah.
you might get some fancy MVP that looks cool, but once you try deploying it, once you try adding some custom feature or tweaking something that the AI or like error that the AI cannot solve in few prompts, then you're screwed. But if you're open to learning and you're vibe learning as you're vibe coding and you're actually trying to understand the concepts, then maybe next time you run into this error, you already know what prompt to send. It's like, okay, that's a issue with the course on the fast API setup, and you know how to solve it already because you've seen it. But so many people just want to shut off their brain and delegate 100% to the AI, and they refuse to learn while doing it. So I think that's really the key difference between vibe coders that fail and that make it.
Yeah, 100%. That's like this very basic example. If you think you understand something like object orientation, so you know when a code has to be modular in some way. If you know that it has to be modular and you at least understand what a class is or a function, you can instruct the AI to split it in that way. You can say, put all of the classes into folder ABC, properly structured, and then when you prompt it after and you want to change something, you also know that you don't need to touch the whole code. You can just say, go into folder A, I don't like this thing, change it, make X, Y, Z, and it can adjust it in a more modular way. And just this high-level knowledge helps you so much to improve the code quality and the outcome. It's crazy.
Yeah, even if you know like the other file, there's other file that we already have that function and you can just import it and use it instead of rewriting it and causing a bunch of issues. Yeah, that alone is huge. And as you said, like it's also essential for the entrepreneurs, like the founders and CEOs who are not technical, if they want to build some internal agents or maybe a SaaS, to have an understanding of what the developers are doing. Like should this feature take 2 weeks or is it more like a 2 days feature? Is this developer actually doing something or is it just wasting time?
Yeah.
That alone is like huge to have some level of understanding.
Correct.
Okay, so multimodal models. I think another thing that people don't understand is the importance of like the difference of a model that's purely text, right? Like DeepSeek models. And then you have Llama 4, which a lot of people hated on. I would say maybe too much, but they were natively multimodal. And I think in the future, that's going to be much more important than people realize. Can you talk on that a bit? Multimodality?
Yeah, I mean, it's already kind of there. In my opinion, the voice part still needs a lot of improvement, but and especially video as well. But we see massive improvements. I mean, if you look in Gemini and AI Studio from Google, for example, it's already really cool. You can just record your screen, you can talk with it, it can see your screen, it can interact with it if you want to. So multimodality is becoming, I wouldn't say not a necessity, but more of something that makes things a lot easier, right? Because in the end, we can also just send token from service to service and basically take any kind of meaning that we want in between. But having just one specific solution that can do all of it is going to be great. Though in some way, I would also be more afraid of security or more like of a monopoly situation, right? Because if you have everything in one, it's very easy for them to control a big share of the market and get a lot more dealing. Yeah.
By who, like OpenAI or the model companies?
Yeah, the big players, correct. Because obviously, if they cover everything inside of a single platform, they have a lot of authority.
So you don't think like there's going to be multiple major players with cutting-edge multimodal models?
Oh, there will be, yeah, and they will all competing with each other.
Yeah, but why would one achieve the ecosystem lock-in?
It's hard to say, but it's at some point it might happen, mainly because of convenience and because there's still humans involved and some sort of setup. If it's not going to be a standard that just shares it in between everyone, someone always tries to bring something extra to it that makes it more interesting than the other solution, for example. Or it might be that it's use case related. But there's definitely going to be a majority of one specific part of the world that uses one model, which brings them some sort of authority in that specific market, which helps them also to control the market more. So I think we are still quite a bit away from that, but I do think that, at least from a political perspective, there's going to be a lot of more regulations later down the line.
Or maybe it will be like with the services integrated, like Google would have such a huge advantage, I feel like.
Yeah.
If Gemini 3.0 is really like insanely amazing, like Gemini 2.5 Pro is, and it's fully multimodal, if you can only use these Google services, or maybe like, certain limitations on other models, but with Google models, you can use them fully. Maybe that would be the ecosystem lock-in. Where like, if you want to use Gmail, Google Docs, everything to the fullest extent, like sure, you can import them in NA10, but you don't have, like in Google Docs, there is hundreds of features. You don't have that in NA10. You have maybe like the top 20, right? Maybe that's how the companies could ecosystem lock in us with like these existing ecosystems, and then just putting the AI as like, you want to use our stack, you have to use our AI.
True. Yeah. I mean, that already kind of happens. I mean, there are a lot of tools that we want to access. You need to use a specific thing, right? So it's kind of already there, but I think it's going to be even bigger than that. It's not just like the ecosystem of the tools we need to use if you want to work with a specific integration, but probably even bigger than that.
Like your data as well?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, they could basically control all the data, right? It's kind of the same if you try to implement a digital passport or a digital identity that links everything you do. Wherever you travel around the world, they will know anything about you. And that needs to be controlled by some sort of entity, right? And that entity is somewhere in the web. And it's probably, it's there. And I'm not sure if there's going to be an ownership, because I don't think it's going to be on a blockchain technology, because obviously people want control about something like this. So someone needs to own it. And that's the perspective I'm looking at.
Yeah, I've noticed a trend, like big tech companies are acting more and more like governments.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, if you want to deploy something on App Store, they want like all your data about your company setup, your everything, who are you, your address, right? But even Google, like recently I had my Google Workspace locked out and they said, we cannot verify you're the owner of this. No reason. And then Google wanted my ID. It's like, you're not a government, Google, but they act like it, you know? They want more and more info, more and more data. And a thought I recently realized today, this is going to be pretty dangerous in the future, where if government wants to get you, all they need to do is access your AI agents. Like, let's say, you know, maybe you use OpenAI or a Google or whatever company, and those AI agents will know everything about you, you know? Your personality traits, your weaknesses, your insecurities, everything. And then instead of the government like pulling up your criminal record or whatever they can do now, they can get in contact with your AI agent and say like, listen, this is the government entity, and the AI agents will just spill the beans. You'll tell them everything, and I think that'll be pretty dangerous.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I still think that all of those AI companies, they're somehow governmental influenced, wouldn't say controlled, because they are required by law, I think, to collect certain information, right? So they are forced into that, which still means it's controlled by someone, which is in the background. It's usually something we don't really notice. But yeah, the risk is there. I mean, if you have some sort of API to talk to, you can talk to it, right? And if there's even a small backbone or something, or like, let's say a small little possibility for someone to hijack something or basically sneak into the system, they could figure out information.
Yeah, so I guess people should be careful where they put their data and also how much data they share with their AI agents, right? Because like there are different solutions such as open source solutions or companies that are more like towards privacy. I would say probably Apple is doing a pretty good job there. But yeah, I guess what are your thoughts on open source? Do you think, you know, as AI agents get more integrated into our lives and really know everything about us, it'll be crucial to have something that's like fully transparent?
I mean, that's always what we aim for, right? Full transparency in some way, or at least having everything open source. It's probably not going to look like that in reality. There's going to be a lot of nuances, but I think a good point to start with, especially for everyone watching this, don't just install random MCP servers and A2A servers.
Yeah.
It's probably the biggest risk you have right now, especially if you don't really understand it, right? So if you just install something on your system that you just download randomly from the web, I mean, you know that's a bad idea. So keeping yourself secure and at least being informed, and I think that's the most important thing, being educated about what's happening is one of the most critical things.
Yeah, I've seen like short videos of like, here's how you get ChatGPT Plus for free. Just run this command and it's like unlock ChatGPT, whatever, and it just installs malware. And so many people fall for this, it's crazy. But like the basics of cybersecurity, it's incredible how few people even use like a password manager, right?
Yeah.
So many people have the same like 9-letter password, which is linked to their birthday or their pet, whatever, and they use it everywhere. It's really crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's... I don't even know where it goes, but I think we assume the same like with Google back then, that we kind of become smarter. And back then there was this controversial thought of Google making us stupid, which is kind of the same thing now again with AI. AI is making us stupid. While I think if you... It does probably make some more stupid if you just don't think about it at all. But I mean, the goal is to rethink the way how you interact with things, right? It doesn't make you stupid, it makes you smarter because you can leverage more, you can make more with information, but it's just a different way of thinking. And I think that's super, super important to understand, because if you can question certain things, it makes it easier for you to understand them. So if I'm afraid of security, I could read a book if I want to and dive into some really deep security measurements, or I can just ask OpenAI or ChatGPT about a solution and it tells me something and then I can act on it, right? I can question a certain set of beliefs or way of thinking and try to leverage that for my advantage. So I think that's just what we're going to see as well. Like the more we educate people about AI, the more they will understand that they just need to shift the way of thinking to be more on the secure side, to actually understand what's happening and to not be afraid of it.
I think that's a very powerful idea of AI potentially making some people dumber. Because imagine, the extremes, right? Obviously there's people who are like super agentic, they always learn, they always do more. Those people, like Balaji said, smart get smarter. Those people will get like superpowers. But if you imagine like the bell curve, right, the IQ curve, I can imagine like the bottom 10 to 20%, those people just outsource their thinking to AI. Because you already see like, people making funny like Instagram reels like, hey ChatGPT, what should I eat today? And stuff like that, right? They're kind of memeing it. But there is a real percentage of people who outsource like a good amount of their decision to AI. Even decisions that you should never outsource to the AI because it's predicting the next token based on all the data on the web. And that will just get you mediocre results by definition. So yeah, what do you think of this idea? Do you think like there will be like the top 10, top 20% of people who will get super far ahead and then the bottom 10 to 20% of people who actually might get dumber because of AI? Do you think that's real?
The question is if I would say they're becoming dumber. There's only, they don't just lose randomly brain cells. I think it's probably even more towards nutrition and other things related that they would become dumber instead of AI. I would probably see AI as still some sort of help. I mean, if they read something, AI usually still tries to give them some alternative options, right? It doesn't just say exactly what they're supposed to do and then leave it. It usually adds some context to it and basically give more explanations. So I think in some way it probably would still help them to do things better, given obviously that the AI company that they are using is not biased or woke or basically tries to pursue a belief.
That's the issue though. Every model is biased.
Yeah, and that's kind of the monopoly we're playing, right? Depends what people use and what establishes itself, and then we got to live with this. And yeah, in that case, the smart ones definitely push ahead. But still, I would not necessarily say it makes them more stupid. It might be just that it influences their opinion and decision, which is also not a good thing.
Maybe that's a better way to say, like, they will outsource completely their thinking to AI and will become super dependent on it.
Yeah.
And then if you take it away, they will be like basically useless. Because like, I just asked ChatGPT. They won't even know what to do for dinner. Like, what do I cook for dinner? Yeah. Oh, I just asked ChatGPT. Or like, how do I turn on the washing machine? Oh, I just asked ChatGPT with the voice mode, with the video mode. And it's like, how do I turn this on? Yeah, I think that's going to be super dangerous. So whoever controls the models can then control everything, all the elections, because all you need is like a slight bias into the model, not like explicit, like this side is bad or this candidate is bad. It'll be like super slight that nobody can even notice, or maybe with like photo tests you can notice it, but like 90% of users will never notice that the model is biased. But since they interact with it so much and never think about it critically and trust it like completely, which many people already do, then, the ideas won't even be their own.
Correct, yeah. And it changes the way the personality is, everything around it. I mean, if we look back now, like 20 years, if I look 20 years back, what was I doing then when I was meeting friends? You didn't really have a phone, right? So you went to the friend's house, you knocked on the door and asked if they're home. Imagine doing this nowadays.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It sounds damn weird.
It's a waste of time,
Right? So it's just the way on how everything changes. And now if we look back into something like that, it looks really extreme for us, while back then it was normal. And it's going to be the same compared to now, like whenever this video is being produced, to maybe like, let's say 10 years ahead. A lot of things are going to change massively.
Yeah, so the people who are not willing to adapt are going to have a hard time,
Very, very hard time.
So speaking of the voice, where you mentioned where the emotion is huge, one use case that everybody can use is learning new languages, right? So let's say you're traveling somewhere and you want to say something. What people don't realize is that you can actually use ChatGPT voice or any other software, but this is the easiest. Everybody has the ChatGPT app to get the perfect pronunciation. So you speak to it and it will correct your pronunciation in real time. Say like, the last part, put more intonation there, right? Or you said that part a bit too fast. I think that is like, anybody needs to do that because the first time you experience that is kind of magical.
True, yeah. And it just becomes better. I see applications being developed where you just say something and it really understands your phonemic pronunciation. It shows it to you and it tells you what to correct. But like even in a more visual way, a multimodal way, which is currently not the case with OpenAI so well. So yeah, it's there's so many use cases if you just think about it. I've seen people running through supermarkets with ChatGPT and asking it things about products and whether or not they're healthy or not. It's interesting, yeah.
I mean, that is like basically anywhere where you have like ignorance debt, right? Any area of life where you're a complete beginner, you can get up to speed to like 60th percentile so fast.
Exactly.
Like asking O3 or, with the ChatGPT, with the video mode, you don't have to be, obviously, it's good to have some knowledge about some things, but in most cases, it's better to master one area, right? That's like the easiest way to be successful in life, become world-class at something, so that everything else you basically shouldn't try to learn. Obviously, if you have a passion at whatever. I'm talking in general. So this is a good example, right? If someone wants to lose weight and they don't know about macros, protein, whatever, they go supermarket, they just take a photo, which even like 2 years ago wasn't really doable. I mean, you could Google it, but so much friction, right? Just taking a photo into ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, and getting an answer within seconds. I mean, the time to first token on 4.0 is pretty amazing. It's so small. It's like
super small, yeah.
Yeah. So getting that answer right away, I think a lot of people like probably there are obviously apps that help you scan stuff or stuff like that, which I think they're mostly hype because you cannot like take a bowl of walnuts and how many calories is this, right? It's a three-dimensional thing. It's hard to say. But yeah, just taking a photo of the ingredients in a store, that's like a real use case that can improve everybody's life instantly. So yeah, I think that's a great example.
Yeah, true. I'm just really afraid of the bias thing. And also like the things we believe are correct or have been correct, if you look at them historically in like a few years compared to if you look at them historically for like 10,000 years. There's just a lot of difference in between. And yeah, that's the only thing I'm really, really afraid of.
I mean, yeah, like the most recent example is COVID, right? Like there's so many things there that during COVID you were not allowed to say, but now turns out to be true. And people understand this. Well, some people don't, but like I think most people kind of understand this, that, media is not telling the truth always, stuff like that. But then they don't extrapolate that, what that could mean in terms of like, health or historical context, stuff like that. And the bias, yeah, you're right. I think that's going to be the biggest risk. And then it, I guess, depends who will win the race,
Yeah, but there's also so much belief we implement from other countries, right? And especially if it combined with like lobbyism, etc. Like cholesterol is one of my favorite things. Yeah. I think it's still one of the biggest misbeliefs that we have until this day.
Okay, so what is the conventional wisdom? That cholesterol is bad, right?
Yeah, cholesterol is bad. Although if you break it down, HDL is good, LDL is bad. That's not even the case, right? They always say you need to lower your cholesterol, while having a high cholesterol is perfectly fine. I mean, if you think about it, your brain is 30% cholesterol. I think even more than that, if I'm not mistaken. So it is there. It's a natural thing. It's something that our body produces ourselves. And from what I've read so far is that cholesterol is that the limit on cholesterol is basically implemented as a result through lobbyism from one specific country.
I mean, I would say the same with meat, right? Like meat is like one of the best foods. Like if I could only eat one food, it would be like a medium rare ribeye steak, because like it's so nutritious. The protein is much more biochemically available than whey protein or powder or whatever. But a lot of people are completely brainwashed against meat, right? They think like, oh, cows cause like all the pollution, when in fact it's like such a negligible percentage, right? So yeah, lobbying and just interest. I think this is exactly why everything that happens on the government level needs to be on the blockchain. Because imagine if we could like trace back who's funding this. Okay, politicians passed this bill. What is the breakdown? Like which countries, which lobbies, which companies founded this? I think that would be like a game changer.
Yeah, exactly. We just have transparency. And that's just one of the things that doesn't happen with lobbyism. And I don't think it's going to change that quickly as well.
But we see like, I don't know. For example, the internet is a very decentralized technology, right? Because like you can say in some ways, if it's implemented in a centralized way, it could like restrict people's freedom. But I would say on average, it freed up more people. You know, more people can become millionaires. They can reach information that otherwise you couldn't. I mean, if I was born in the same place 50 years ago, I couldn't be where I'm at right now because all the info is from the web, from watching YouTube videos, stuff like that. Yeah. So, but then you have also Bitcoin. So I think the world, like there is more and more of these decentralized, libertarian technologies. I think, there is a lot of reason to be optimistic here.
I mean, yeah, I'm optimistic, but I do think like government levels are not gonna really influence that much. I mean, we see, if you look into France, for example, when they try to publish their stablecoin, and if you look at the smart contracts and the functions they have in there, Like,
okay, so
wow.
What was in there?
I need to recall. But basically that you can kind of freeze the whole assets of one specific wallet and deduct the money from there. It's just control again, right? So they kind of show it off in the front as like being something decentralized, but then still having the possibility of controlling it. So it's just always going to be the race. It's just like who's better. Is it going to be the smart people that actually develop ahead and kind of like really bring in a competition in some way to the governmental institutes? Because in the end, we kind of have to. I mean, otherwise we are all being forced into some digital identity that we need to follow, and we are forced in. And just imagine you're traveling somewhere around the world and you're just getting limited from traveling because, I don't know, you didn't pay your bill for XYZ.
And then you lose your access to, your banking, everything, your AI.
Correct.
Even like, because people think, like, okay, if you didn't have access to AI today, who cares? But in 5 years, it'll be essential. You'll be like, without legs, you'll be paralyzed if you don't have access to your AI agent. Yep. And if that is all centralized in the control of the government, that could be very dangerous.
Exactly. And that's where it comes up to us to change that, or to make sure we are at least in a way secure, which I somehow think is also going to be always the case. Like there's always going to be options. If something closes down, some new option comes up. It's just the way it is. Because in the end, people in a government, they're also human. They also understand the game and they also want to have freedom. They usually just do that through lobbyism. But because they are human, they're gonna be ways. And it's just up to us staying informed and making sure we can leverage the information that we have at this time and see any kind of, if you want to call them loopholes, I would just call them using our power of knowledge to just make a life of freedom, a life of things that actually matter to us, meaning being libertarian or just doing whatever is on our freedom and ethics without hurting anyone else.
But let's say there's one government that really starts abusing this, right? Pushing for CBDCs or digital identity.
It's gonna be, yeah.
Yeah, but then the argument is that all the wealthy people are gonna move, right? I mean, we see this right now happening in Europe. Like everybody's leaving for Dubai, right? Wouldn't you say it's that same thing? If you have, obviously not everybody will move, but like I'm saying, the 5% wealthiest class will just move away, which will take away so many jobs, product, services. We can touch on that later, but why not the same thing with CBDCs or digital identity? If one country starts mandatoring it, people would just like revoke their passwords and move somewhere else.
Yeah, it's the same thing pretty much.
So then wouldn't it be like countries competing as products? Like you have companies competing, who makes the best product. Country, lowest taxes, safety, blah blah blah, will compete for the digital nomads, for the entrepreneurs, people who create all the services, all the products. Don't you think it'll be fine since there's like 200 countries in the world?
It's going to be okay. Yeah, it's just a switch of power. I mean, if you look into Germany was a manufacturing country, right? It was really good. Now it outsources a lot of the manufacturing. It becomes more and more. They outsource it to different places. Mainly because the way Germany is structured doesn't work out for those companies and they can't just not really live out their capitalism, make money, which is kind of like just one of the main drivers. And it's something that is, in my opinion, also required. I mean, if you look into some other states in Europe, for example, they try to increase the wealth tax to make a few $100 million or $1 billion more. But what happens is they lose the actual rich people and they get money out of the country, which is even worse, right? And I don't know who decides laws like that. It's just completely unnecessary. In my opinion, like look at UAE, for example. It's a place that it's great to make business and stuff like that. In my opinion, it's not really something to live super, super long term. Just because I like nature a lot. I need to be connected with nature. So it's good for business. It's a reason why we're here, because it's very easy to connect. But you see the switch, right? We are here because we have some sort of advantage, because they understand how to do certain things in the right way. Which is not like the natural part, which they cannot really cover because of the way it is. But just from the power that brings of understanding the economic system and where you can get money and how you handle money makes them thrive, right? Which is very sad to see, because I like Europe, I like Germany, etc. Like the country is beautiful. But if politics mess things up in a tremendous way that just don't really align with my ethics, there's no reason to go there. So I can fully understand why it happens. And I think there's something that just like circulates. In the end, what would happen if, let's say, 99% of the world wealth is in one specific country, all the other countries, they would put a lot of limitations and sanctions on that country to try bringing it down probably. And then things would start spreading out again. So it's always just a game of power. And I think it's just like I said, it's very versatile, and we probably just always need to adapt. That's what we mean. We probably live in the world of digital nomadism, where we are not just traveling like a nomad for fun, but we travel for different reasons, like freedom.
Yeah, for sure. Also, I think on that topic, it's like the people who can move, the entrepreneurs, digital nomads, whatever. Those somehow, I don't know who is behind this propaganda, but those are like viewed negatively by most people, right? But actually, entrepreneurs are absolutely fundamental to society. They create jobs, they create products, they solve problems, they create services. If you lose all the entrepreneurs like UK is doing, the second largest decrease of millionaires after China, which China is like 25x the population, that is absolutely detrimental to society. Like if you lose the people who create the jobs, services, who push the society forward, the long-term impact, I think most people don't realize how bad that is, right? So, and again, you cannot tax those people because those people are the ones that will move. Those people will set up, boom, LLC here, free zone company here, tax setup, this and that. It's like, it's such a crazy idea that you can just, put a wealth tax on somebody and they will not do anything about it. Like if you just steal somebody, like in the UK, they steal like half of your salary if you're an entrepreneur, right? They 55% tax or whatever. Thinking that person will not just move, right? Especially if that tax, like if the tax went into good things, right? And like the country was prospering, everything, maybe those people would stay. But that's not the case. It's being sent abroad, it's being misspent, corruption, whatever. So the entrepreneurs just leave. And I think we will only see the long-term effects of that. I think right now we're starting to see it in Europe, like UK, I'd probably say is worst. But again, like as you said, there's no reason Dubai is like a desert, right? What they managed to do from a desert is incredible. The only reason why we're here is because they made it such a good product, the country. Super easy to move it as an entrepreneur, taxes are basically zero or next to zero, safest place on earth. They just made it like a no-brainer, infinite amount of services. So like, this is how countries need to think. But I don't know, I feel like, as you said, the European leaders, they do such a bad job, it almost has to be like in bad faith. It's like the fundamentals are not complex,
Yeah. But that's why I don't understand like how some people end up on top of like the political system. I mean, the thing is, I don't even try to put my head around it because I know it's way too complex and over my head to deal with it. I mean, we have enough problems with our AI stuff. So for us, like if I look into the future, I choose where I have the path of the least resistance towards my goals. And freedom is one of the biggest things, which unfortunately is changing in a lot of countries as well. If it comes to things like bureaucracy, I just don't like bureaucracy. So that was one of the main reasons why I left initially, because the burden for bureaucracy in Germany is so high. It's insanely high. I didn't even care that much about taxes, to be honest. If I can just live my life and I know I have an income that suffices for anything that I want to do, I wouldn't even mind the taxes so much. But for the fact that I need to spend time on bureaucracy, if I want or not, there's something that you just cannot outsource. You need to do them. And it's just so much mental pressure that I just don't like. So the easiest thing is to leave. And that's why I think it's just important that people understand that it's not always about taxes when you leave somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's about the freedom to choose doing with your time what you actually want to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like the number one reason was actually other entrepreneurs, connections. Because like in Europe, the mindset is like, you're already successful, you're already doing well, don't mess it up, Don't push too hard, don't take too many risks. Here in Dubai, it's completely different. It's like, of course you're going to make more money, of course you're going to be more successful. The mindset is completely different, and that attracts different types of people. Yeah. People that, in Europe are harder and harder to find. Here in Dubai, you can just meet so many people that, even if they don't live here, they visit once or twice a year because it's such a like spot of the high level talent. So yeah, that's one of the main things for me. Taxes obviously also helps. Like nobody wants to, like think about it in time, right? People say like, 30% is not that bad. Would you give away, if you work every single day of the year, like most entrepreneurs probably do, 20 days of a year, right? Just stolen. When you put it in time, people feel it much more. If you put it in taxes, people are like, whatever, 30%, it's worse in some other countries. But like, if someone stole 120 days, if someone said like, Jannis, you have to be in this room 120 days of the year, right? And your time is completely like decided, you would be pissed off. Everybody would be pissed off. But people are just like, they don't care when it's in the money. It's very interesting.
True, yeah. I mean, To be fair, I think in the end, and that's probably something when you're very young and ambitious, you really value the tax a lot more. I mean, I do the same until you reach a certain level. And then you have other constructs that you can use to basically just reduce that. But I'd say in the end, for me, what matters is freedom. So wherever I can achieve freedom, and freedom for me is like having land, you know, owning something where you can actually live, where you can produce your own, maybe let's say cattle or food or whatever it is. And you can just live a healthy lifestyle without stress on your own terms. That's something that is just really, really powerful. And in that case, even if you pay taxes in a country, it might even like outweigh, or like, let's say it's not as important as the standard that you give from whatever else you can achieve, if that is a place where you actually want to live. So I would say taxes, the value to taxes changes over the years.
But I would say also like the trajectory of the country.
Yeah,
I think perhaps
100%.
that's the most important. You know, if you want to establish family, buy property, you want to have some faith that the country is going in the right direction.
100%.
Which in most countries in Europe is very hard to do.
Yeah.
It's like you see where it's going and you have like the exact opposite of faith, right? Like the reason why a lot of people are moving into Dubai or investing in Dubai is because they believe that it's going to be better in 10 years, you know, more people, more opportunities than it is now. But like doing that in Western part of the world is becoming more and more difficult.
Yeah, it's just not really beneficial.
Oh, a great example is nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is such a like insane invention where everybody's energy bill could be less than their phone bill. But for some reason, the people, you know, running the world have decided, oh no, nuclear energy is not going to be the case. You know, where in Germany they had to bring back the coal plants. It's like absolutely insane. So what do you think is the reason why nuclear energy is not used? Do you think it's really like just, you know, Chernobyl, like Fukushima, these two disasters?
I mean, I'm not an engineer towards that, but to be honest, I see it more efficient and beneficial than coal. And knowing that people become smarter, I also think we don't repeat the mistakes twice, right? So yeah, it could be detrimental if something happens, but I think the chances of it happening are probably way lower if you compare them like to 20 years ago. So I couldn't say why specifically. It probably has something to do with politics or power, or a switch of power. Interesting thing was that when in the moment Germany got rid of the coal, they actually started importing electricity from France, which used coal, which is kind of like counterproductive, but that's just the world we live in. So I personally would also see like nuclear energy as more beneficial and something we should potentially use.
Returning back to AI, we talked about open source.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Sesame? Which, for those who don't know, is a text-to-speech model that's very emotive, you know, and it's open source.
I'm a big fan of it. It's one of the things that made me really excited for this year. Just for the methods they use on how to calculate their tokens based on the voice that we actually send in. So good thing is it's awesome, and I know now it works, which means we also know that it's achievable, which was just a big thing that I just wanted to see, and it came earlier than I was actually expecting it. Like the concepts that they showed in Archive, I've seen them years ago, and I knew, oh yeah, this could be actually something really interesting to look into. I just didn't have the brain power to build it out, and some smart people did it, so I'm very, very happy about that. The only thing that is not really on my side right now is that they only released the 1 billion token model, even though they have like an 8 billion one, obviously. It kind of makes sense. They just want to show the people what's possible, and we could potentially use it and train our own model on maybe even like an 8 billion token model. But again, it's just complex, right?
So you think people are going to use the outputs of smaller voice models to train bigger ones, like the same way with text? You think it's replicatable?
Maybe, yeah. I would just like to see open source being more open source, that they don't just release the smallest version, but also the biggest version. But I know it, understand it. It's capitalism, so it's also leverage, because I believe, I potentially could see, because they get investments, that they might even release their own platform for it. There's always some reason behind it. And it's kind of the same why we sell software in the end, because anyone could basically build any kind of software. It's just saving time. And it's the same with those models. So if you release something open source, it's because you want to give someone the possibility of doing something with it to save time instead of building it themselves. So from like the concept and everything they have, I really see it super, super beneficial. And I see it something that actually becomes more and more popular this year. And yeah, hopefully, we have a modal a multimodal version that is as empathic and as emotionally intelligent as Sesame is.
On the topic of open source, it's actually important to point out that a lot of stuff in AI is not fully open source, right?
Yeah.
It's like only open weights, but then the training data, which might be the most important part, if you care about the bias, almost nobody gives that, or nobody shares what the training data is, right? How do we change this? Do you think it's possible to change this, like force the companies to make it fully open source, or do you think this will always be the case where they don't reveal the training data?
It's always a position of power, right? For why they don't want to release it, or maybe even a fear of being the data being abused. I wouldn't even say necessarily lawsuits, because it's a powerful thing. It's super emotional. So imagine you have negative intentions and you try to build a model that is emotionally intelligent. You can influence, especially the older generation that never heard of voice AI, in a powerful way. So that might be one of the reasons. I know they're backed by massive companies, and that might be one of the reasons why they don't release it. Though, over time, I believe we're gonna see more and more open sourced version of the actual training data. Because if the training data is synthetic, it's another thing that we can use, and which I think is also already more popular, more spread.
So you think it's more about like the risk than, because for example, why I would say like Meta doesn't fully open source the training data is I think there's a lot of data that they shouldn't have, right? Maybe like scraped illegally, stuff like that. So for those big LLM companies, I would say that's probably the main reason. But maybe for the AI voice companies, it's different.
Yeah, I mean, you always run into issues with anything. I mean, there's one file that you scrape from somewhere else that you shouldn't have, and you run into these issues. There are tons of complaints about it, so it might be one of the reasons. And I mean, both, I would probably even see them equally. I mean, all of them are really valid. It might be that they get hurt if they would publicize something. But I just know that with what's possible, the security risk is massive. And especially with emotional intelligence, which is even impressive to us, and we are building with this stuff every single day, it can be detrimental in some of the industries.
I mean, yeah, in the last 3 months, I would say I've seen 2 or 3 videos that really tricked me at first until I open up the comments and see it's AI, right? I think there was a really good one of Trump showing the Bitcoin white paper, but it's actually the Constitution, right? So if you haven't seen the clip of that being the Constitution, you would think oh, he has a Bitcoin white paper in his office. There's some other clips of I think it was eagle hunting a cheetah or whatever that was AI generated. But yeah, it's really getting there. Even the people who know it's happening, who are building with it, will be tricked. So then what about the rest of the 90% of the population, right?
Correct.
Especially the older people who can just fake, my voice, your voice, call, some aunt or grandmother or whatever. It's we've been in a crash, we need $1,000, boom. If it sounds exactly like us and it sounds like we're in a car crash.
Exactly. And, we are at the forefront and we are already getting tricked. Imagine now, 15 years ago, when we had the first, more 3D animated video games, if you think about it, they were looking if you would look at them now, they were what garbage quality is that? And back then it was wow, it looks so real. It looks so real. It's crazy. It's the same thing right now. Just on a higher level, I would say, even a worse level, to be honest.
Yeah, so this is a simple security tip for everybody. Probably everyone should have this discussion with their family, inform them of what's possible if they get a call from random number, or even their own number if it's spoofed or whatever, and it sounds suspicious that I'm in a crash, they need some quick money, it's probably a scam. At least tell them that it's possible, show them some AI images, show them AI videos, explain what's possible with AI voice, so that, your family doesn't get scammed, because these scams are becoming more and more prevalent. Yeah. Recently it was some bank executive wired $40 million because they faked the voice of some employee or whatever. So it's not just elderly people, it's also professionals.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually, by the way, one of the risks with open source as well, because Sesame, they have a watermark in their code.
Yeah,
it's just a line at the end that links to a function to watermark the actual output. And with open source, you just fork it and you remove it. Now you have a model that is not watermarked, right? So you can be very, very easily irresponsible and just do negative stuff with it without anyone else ever noticing that it is Sesame.
But then again, if we're on the open source libertarian side, shouldn't it be possible to make that and then build systems to prevent that?
Exactly, and that's what's happening, right? We have both sides. We have the ones that do some bad stuff. We have the ones that counter bad stuff. And I think it's just part of where we are, and it's probably going to get more and more.
What do you think about IP law? What do you think? Like, what is the future of copyright? Do you think everybody who writes content on the internet should be owner of it, or do you think the AI companies are free to scrape it?
I think it depends what you do with it, right? If you build a software and you don't want to publicize it, great. If it becomes public, there's not much you can do against it, even if you want to. Maybe if it comes to a higher level of power, let's say you build a product and it's kind of copied from somewhere else and it becomes really popular. Obviously, you have more public exposure, which makes it easier for you to being sued as well in case something happens. So it's always a give and take. And I think if you use open source things, you publicize it. It's all okay from like an ethical perspective. But yeah, I agree. It's probably going to be harder if it comes to actual contracts. Like if we as a voice agency are, for example, being hired by an enterprise and we need to have like IP definitions, when is IP actually IP, right? It's a very, very hard topic. And also because nowadays we don't just use AI, we use sometimes subcontractors that use AI that maybe use something that wasn't part of it. And they kind of say they ensure it's okay, but you never really know. So it's a very tricky topic, which I think it doesn't necessarily matter for like a smaller product, but the problem is once you go big, it needs to be clean. And I think then it's up to us to basically just go back through the code and adjust the things that are not okay. So it's a give and take and a very versatile thing. So if I see IP, I would still say if you build a product, it's more about, the IP is more in the market share and the popularity. So if you have the power of making something popular, it's kind of your IP. And the IP is basically having the connection between the audience and the product, not the product itself. And it's something because I built a software product before, right? And the thing, it's the same when you do YouTube. Like people follow you because you have some sort of authority. If you would replace yourself now, they would probably not watch you anymore. And it's kind of this thing because it's a connection between something that brings this IP instead of the actual product itself. And that's why I think the software itself doesn't matter that much. It's more like how you can connect it to it and that connection itself that becomes important.
Interesting. So people who create content on the web, it's more about like that person than the content itself.
Yeah, it might go into this direction. I mean, there's always going to be the thing where you definitely know it's one specific person who made that because it's just so unique. It's just such a fingerprint. But generally, I mean, there's a lot of general content. There's a lot of UGC stuff. If you create a Minecraft video, it's probably hard to say whoever made that. So it really depends on the context. And if something is unique to you, I mean, you don't even need to have any kind of like IP because they know that it's from you, right?
Yeah, for sure. This is why people who like worry about people stealing their titles or thumbnails, it's like you are the creative source, right? Mm-hmm. Like if people are copying you, you're doing something right. It's like when they stop copying you, you should be worried.
Exactly. And because they copy you, they're anyways behind because you already made something that works and you can already work on other things. So it's always about going with the time and being on the forefront.
How do you think we will use AI agents 12 months from now? If you had to say, obviously AI field is changing rapidly, but if you had to like put yourself 2026, what does the day-to-day look like? Because you recently, as you said, deployed your first AI employee. What do you think your business, your life will look like 12 months from now?
Good question. It's so flexible that it's incredibly hard to say, but from where I could imagine it being is that we actually have the first proper employees that can do more and more tasks. So it's more like I would say like a slow process of us bringing in more employees that can do things, basically enrich our core team that is doing well and just help them with tasks and then basically just cover more and more of that. So right now it's probably more like starting building out use cases that are repetitive, then maybe employing some that are good for marketing. Then you probably employ some from other companies that build those agents or these agentic systems for one specific use case. So I could see ourselves having some sort of agentic workforce that works for us in the next 12 months.
So you think each person will be just like way more powerful in terms of their output per day?
You have more lean teams. You have a very few that can control and oversee things. But like anything that happens within it, and that's kind of what we discussed earlier, you probably want to have some sort of manager agents that can overview the productivity of others and tell if someone did something right or wrong, and then basically just penalize or reward them for their behavior. And I don't know if that's going to happen within 12 months already, but given where the protocols right now are, if everything continues to progress the same way it is right now, we could potentially see that already in the next 12 months.
So you mentioned leaner teams. do you believe the Naval idea of there will be like 1 billion companies, or like 1, 2, 3 people companies in the future?
Yeah.
Why do you believe
sure.
that?
Because in the end, we all know that the most successful companies are the boring companies, right? Or like it's a boring company always makes a lot of money. And boring things are boring because they're often repetitive, or they're things that just have to be done in a specific way that we humans don't. And those are the ones that you can easily automate. And because they are boring, they're still kind of old school. I mean, that's something that the boomers currently have, the baby boomers. They own those companies and they're slowly starting to sell them, which is something where we just have so much potential of automating things. And if you think about it, right now it's a bit hard with privacy regulations, but let's, for example, say a notary. I do know notaries that just sit all day there and just sign papers. Like, yeah, they need to have a certain set of knowledge about an industry, but let's say they focus on one specific thing and all they need to do is just put in their signature. Or even here, if you sell a property, you need to sign certain papers. And that procedure is always the same. If you just automate that with AI and you just create an entity for that small thing to just sign that paper digitally and take care of the communication, you can just build that with AI agents. You just deploy that and you have a full product. The only thing you need to do is maybe, for now at least, handle the regulatory compliance, maybe set up the companies, take care of the bank accounts, because it all needs KYC. But yeah, imagine how cool that would be if you have an AI agent that does KYC for you and is basically the owner of the bank account.
I mean, I don't know about you, but like if I get a contract that I don't understand, my first intuition is to try to understand it with AI, with ChatGPT. So I would absolutely love to have an AI agent who has some, specialized documents from that country, maybe like, hundreds of pages of the actual law. So it can refer to that, data that might not be fully represented in the training data, but it's a powerful model, like a powerful reasoning model that can just refer to those documents and sign on my behalf. Maybe I just need to click approve and read like an abstract, one paragraph, like this contract is about this, blah, blah, blah. Here is the attached documents, it's standards, practices, nothing sketchy, approve. This would be huge, right? As you said, like you hate bureaucracy. I think most entrepreneurs probably hate bureaucracy. So this alone, I would pay for pretty big money. If I could like go a year, entrepreneur year without doing any tax, any legal stuff, any contract stuff, and I just had AI agent take care of that. That alone is not only a time save, but like the mental burden save, right? Because that's almost like the bigger cost. You having to think about like, taxes are coming up. There's this contract I didn't sign. This tax accountant, this advisor, what are they doing? Are they good? Just have an AI agent that you can trust. You can upload documents. The AI agent maybe every 24 hours pulls the official government websites, gets the latest docs, latest updates, and you can trust that completely, and it automates all that boring labor. I mean, think about like what a tax advisor is, right? I mean, it's like a glorified LLM. So,
they read the information, they understand it, they try to see if there are any kind of pitfalls. But it's gonna be good for us for sure.
Yeah, so I just cannot wait for that future where really all of the boring work, like basically you can define what you like, what needs to be done, and then from this you pick like the 20% that you're world class at, and then the 80% you just either hire human employees or AI agents to do that. And I think that's pretty realistic within 1 to 2 years, especially for people who are at the cutting edge of AI and are trying to build these, voice AI or AI agents, whatever. I think that's much more possible and much closer than people realize.
I think if that comes, it will probably also come along with a switch of wealth again, once more.
Yeah.
And not from countries, but not from governments, but from countries.
Okay, can you elaborate?
Yeah, because if you understand the law, you can use the law, right? You can find loopholes, you can find certain things with AI that you would probably otherwise couldn't if you would need to read all of the actual instructions. So if you can really train something on the whole country's regulations and laws, you can find ways on creating constructs that maybe don't even exist yet.
So you think like AI agents will lose countries' tax revenue because they will optimize?
Yeah, it's the same like what we do right now with this advanced reasoning, right? Because advanced reasoning always tries to find the path of the least resistance. At least that's what OpenAI figured out. So whenever it tries to do something, even if there's like a less ethical way or a shortcut, it tries to use the shortcut because it gets to the goal faster. And imagine that on like a level of the AI. Let's say you talk about, I live in Germany. can you help me with my tax? And instead of helping you with the tax, it tries to register you in a new country and just gives you a new passport. I don't know what it tries to do, but it tries to get you out somewhere because that is the best way that it deemed as relevant, right? So I can see like massive disruptions there. So that would probably be a very, very interesting thing to look into.
Yeah, that'll be certainly interesting. I mean, if the goal is to minimize your tax and maximize your freedom, you tell that to the AI agent, and the AI agent can browse the entire web and it can execute actions on your behalf. Or maybe you just need to like approve it, like boom, approve new bank account, whatever. That would be the actual answer instead of paying 40-50% in Europe, setting up somewhere else. I think that would be super interesting. Yeah.
The question is, there's a knowledge that is incredibly hard for AI to learn, especially with the nuances and everything. I mean, everyone has a different background, a different passport, but
you can communicate that to the AI.
Yeah, nowadays you have to. But imagine, like we talk about the general intelligence. People trust AI and just randomly do stuff. If AI would propose something like that, they would think, oh yeah, it's like, this uninformed optimism. They see something, it's cool, it seems to work. They just go there and figure out, oh yeah, man, it's not even that easy. Like if you leave from Germany, for example, and you don't have a stable income or an issue, and you move to a country like, I don't know, let's say in craziest ways, like Afghanistan, Somalia, like there you have no health insurance, you have basically nothing. And if you never educate yourself on it, you will just end up in a position where you definitely don't want to be, right? Because it would probably not even comply with your ethics. So that's one thing where I see this being a big issue if people just start relying on AI whenever it does something.
But I don't think this is going to be the case with like the top 10%,
no,
top 5%.
For sure not. Yeah. So not.
I mean, why would someone just move to South Sudan? Why would the model even suggest that?
If it sees some specific benefit there. There's always
like if it's optimizing only for one thing, and then.
Yeah, this is the way we talk with AI, right? If I think about like I'm on a country where I can do whatever I want, what would it do? It would probably try to find a country where there's like barely any laws.
Yeah.
Or where laws are being abused or whatever. So if you look into something like Somaliland, for example, yeah, Somaliland is self-declared inside of Somalia. So even though it belongs to Somalia, it has its very own set of rules, its own currency, its own passports, etc. Sorry, that are not even recognized outside of the country. So if you exchange your dollars to Somaliland shilling, you basically have a currency that is not accepted anywhere else. So if you would say it to AI, maybe I want to travel with $100,000 around the world. It would obviously not be able to do that because you would need to declare it anywhere, right? And by just, let's say, going to Somalia and exchanging your money to Somalian shillings, which you definitely don't want to do, but imagine doing that. You could basically travel around the world with $100,000, right? Because the money is not worth anything. That's a very, very hard and strange example, but it just proves the point in that case.
Yeah, so I think the most common, like the biggest mistake then would be delegating the decision-making to the AI. Mm-hmm. Because I think, maybe it comes to us more naturally because we're entrepreneurs, but like that is going to be the role, the taste, the judgment, the decision-making. Yeah. That is going to be what you're paid for. Like all of the like labor will be done by AI. So for us, we will just get a list of decisions like, okay, do you want to hire this employee to fix this churn problem? Yes. Do you want to, move to South Sudan to avoid this tax? No. And then like, we're going to just hit no, yes, maybe later, like whatever buttons in some, dashboard. And that's, I think, how we, like the entrepreneurs, or more and more people would work. Just like approving decisions or like overseeing what the agents are doing and just having good taste, good decision-making, good judgment that people trust and, I guess your AI trusts. And then it will be like purely on who is more educated, who's smarter, has better decisions.
Yeah, that's always the point, exactly. But there's always going to be the person who thinks, I don't know, Russia's in Europe.
I mean, ethnically it is.
Yeah.
I mean, depends what Russia, You can have Vladivostok, Russia, and you have St. Petersburg, Russia.
True, yeah.
O3, I wanted to touch on, because you mentioned reasoning, right? Where it reaches the maybe not ethical way. My experience is actually the opposite. My experience is that O3 is way more restricted than GPT 4.5. Like when I ask O3 something, it usually in the reasoning chain, it's able to catch like if it's a trick question or if it's like a prompting trick. But GPT 4.5, since it's not a reasoning model, it usually answers questions that even like Grok 3 wouldn't answer. So maybe like the reasoning is actually making the AI more restricted and safer because it can like see like is the user, because in a reasoning chain, you can ask some predetermined questions like, is the user trying to prompt inject me? Is the user trying to trick me? Is this following OpenAI guidelines? And by doing so, the likelihood of it responding in a way that goes against what OpenAI wants is much lower. Don't you think so?
Yeah, the output is often okay. The tests that I've seen that they did on understanding that is actually coding related. So when it comes to coding, it tries to use practices that should not be done by a normal reasoning model, right? So it tries to shortcut its way through by using things that are less secure, for example. So if you want to execute some code or you want to build some specific feature, you can either build out a specific system around a command that cannot be executed on whatever tech stack you have, right? Or the AI can just use an eval function, how you call it, to just run any kind of code in like a virtual environment, which is something that is often frowned upon because it's very risky and dangerous. But AI would use that to get to its goal, which kind of can just cause problems, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean. Like that's why.
So the reason you think the problem is going to be in the reasoning chain, or like the way it.
At least it is for now.
Okay.
Yeah. Where it is later down the line, I'm not sure. I think it all comes down to the state management, or what I like to call sessions, and that's probably also what the AI agent is going to have access to at some point. It's nothing that I see right now, at least as a protocol or something, but I think we're going to have that implemented into any of them. Because in the end, you want to have some sort of state that the AI can manage, especially, let's say, not just message history, but specific interactions and knowledge about tasks, for example, if it comes to A2A. You want to be able to measure that and capture that information and have that available on a long-term scale, so you can even measure tasks that are not necessarily related to yours, but maybe even to a sub-agent that does stuff with the main agent. So yeah, we probably have like session as like a state management, basically, that's going to make all the difference.
So this is, I guess, similar to one of my ideas where I believe that whoever has the most context will win. Because up to, only recently OpenAI started having the long-term memory and collecting, integrating other chats into responses. I feel like maybe like Perplexity isn't doing even anything. Obviously you can put in system prompt, but I mean, in terms of long-term context about the user, would you say this is like a similar to the state management where, it is like more contextual information about what the user likes, how it uses it, stuff like that might not be relevant to this prompt, but somehow is managed by the AI agent? Or would you like separate those ideas?
No, that's pretty much it, yeah. Yeah, that it can access them and probably even just like contextually filter them, who is actually talking with it.
So I think we're going to see like very special, there's going to be like, OpenAI who are like super general, but I think we're going to see more and more specialized AI tools that, maybe only your marketing or whatever, that are super specialized on one area, but then just want all of the companies or persons context about that area. Because if you have the same model, even let's say if OpenAI has even a better model, right? And they don't release the best one, even if your AI model is like 5% worse than the cutting edge, if you have more data, relevant data about the user, you can deliver much better responses than company with a 5% better model. So I think building products or AI agents or solutions where you get as much relevant data as possible is going to be really deciding on who wins the AI race.
Well, the question if that's going to be available with protocols, right, like MCP. Because if it is, you can basically use it from anywhere. Then it's more like this massive network of things we can use.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess we'll see. This question is like which protocols catch on, which don't catch on.
Yeah, I mean, right now we try to establish them. It's just Wild West.
Yeah.
We'll see.
It's really crazy. Like in some ways the AI space has been since our 50s, right? Like maybe 40s even. But in some ways we're so early. It's kind of hard to like, decide whether we're late or whether we're early because both are true. But yeah, in 10, 15 years, like it's impossible to even know. Even if you're like the most pessimistic, slow takeoff, everything, even then, even if like things don't even speed up from here and it's like same rate as the last 12 months, that alone would be pretty insane.
Yeah. It's going to accelerate. It's just going to be insane. It's even hard for us to wrap our head around what's going to happen in like 2 years.
Yeah, and we're in the field.
Yeah.
Imagine the average person on the street.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think like there's any chance, because I recently listened to the Naval podcast, he thinks AGI is nowhere near. Do you think what do you think? Do you think there's any merit to that idea? Or do you think we're likely close?
No, we're not close. I wouldn't say close. There's a lot of things that we need to fix before, and I think the hardest is probably refining actions. Refining actions in the sense of when AI does something, is it good or bad? So you basically also, we need to find a way of building up this system where, like we have in our brains, different inputs coming together and one passes through. Imagine with AI agents, you have one that controls a couple of agents, then you have another one on top who controls the output of that one agent. It's basically this whole pyramid scheme. And that's going to be incredibly important for decision making because it, and the learning thing, what I said with like process mining, but on an agent level. If we have that and we can basically do some sort of back propagation on the assistants, so tell them what's actually good and what wasn't good, and they can learn from it, we kind of like rebuild the same system that we have inside of our brain with neurons, right? If we can establish that and we can give an agent a specific guideline and whatever that is, might be let's say cookies. They get cookies when they do something right, and they are built into a system where they learn the same way. Then we could potentially achieve AGI, I would say so, which is kind of the same like a human. We basically have this massive networks on agents that all can do certain tasks, but they're being trained on specific processes that work. And yeah, it would be just a more specialized version of AI doing things. And if we bring that out, imagine at some point, if they have a system that works, it can deploy its very own agents and it can train them by itself and do certain things. So then it would have the granular power on doing whatever it wants, right? So might be a thing that AGI comes in the 5 to 10 years, but it's nothing that's close.
Maybe that's why OpenAI is like, as you said, we need the validation layer. That's why OpenAI is pushing so hard on A/B tests. I don't know if you noticed, but recently I feel like I'm getting way more of like which chat is better.
Yeah, for sure.
Like 6 months ago, it was pretty rare to get it. Now I get it like every week, multiple times a week. So maybe they recognize the same thing, that we need that, feedback on which of these is better and why. And obviously that's usually for a single message output, but for entire agentic workflows, if you see like this AI agent executed it that way, took him 7 steps, this AI agent did in 4 steps and is much cleaner, you'd say this is better, right? And then you would backpropagate and teach those principles across your entire suite of agents. I think, that's the most powerful.
Yeah. I mean, for now, for sure, yeah. But imagine AI can, you have this whole system that can regulate itself and it has access to all tools in the world. It can deploy its own servers, it can deploy its own things on it. So it would be something that I can probably imagine live on just servers around the world, which means the only thing to shut it down would be shutting down all servers, which is kind of like not really possible.
But I mean, there was pretty big blackouts recently in Spain and Portugal.
Yeah, would probably not bother an AI, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, if AI is decentralized across 100 plus countries, it's pretty chill. But I don't know. I didn't have a good even though like I was here in Dubai, I wasn't in Spain or Portugal. My reaction was pretty bad to that. Like I was pretty scared by that because it just shows like how vulnerable the system is, and the percentage of people that have solar panels or batteries or generators is like less than 0.1%, right? So what are your thoughts on that? Like if you had, since you're moving around, but like if you had a house with a family, would you do this like triple redundancy, electricity, internet, Starlink, everything?
Triple redundancy, probably not. Because I like to be connected to nature, I definitely want to have a certain stability. So yeah, 100% having solar, maybe having some other means of supporting myself in the night. Maybe some I don't know, fuel aggregator or something like that, just to generate energy. Just having them, it doesn't hurt, right? And it's mainly for some necessity, because if something goes down, it goes usually down for a reason, at least in the world we are living in. So yeah, being able at least to generate something to some extent is really helpful. But it's nothing that I would completely force upon. For me, it's more important having the most the most core things that we need for living: water, food, and a place to sleep, right? And potentially something to defend yourself later down the line. So having that around is way more important than the electricity itself. So yeah, those kind of things are really important, and maybe even like water filters and those kind of things. That's always something I really like.
Yeah, but I feel like those you can set up pretty easily, right?
Exactly. Doesn't need.
Maybe I disagree with you on like the electricity is not that important, because again, once AI is really integral to our lives, without electricity you cannot even use our Bitcoin. without electricity, you cannot access AI agents. If your AI agents are running your entire business and you don't have electricity for a week, I mean, maybe you can say like if they're deployed, they don't need you that much, but I don't know. I don't like the idea of being without electricity. Like, I understand, like, yeah, food is more important, obviously, defending yourself if there's a massive blackout. But then again, like, once you figure out the basics and, your family is safe and you have roof over your head, then what? You have like 24 hours in a day. And I hate the fact that, like, there could be, I could be disconnected from what's happening on the internet, purely like from just not having power. It just feels like you're powerless. Like, again, imagine if we were born 200 years ago. If you're like in the serfed class and you're like a poor farmer, there's only so much you can do. But now, thanks to the internet, thanks to electricity, we can do so much more.
True. And I think it always depends on what you put value on, right? But if I'd be one day without internet, which happened from time to time.
Yeah, but one day. Like, I think one day that's just like a trial. I think this is like a test.
Yeah.
Imagine like a month blackout.
Well, a month blackout, you'll find ways to get around. There might be a stored gasoline, you can drive somewhere else. If it's worldwide, it's worldwide. What do you do if it's worldwide?
Well, no, I think that's unrealistic worldwide. I'm saying like, a country or maybe a few countries in a region.
Yeah.
So, okay, what do you think is the strat then? Like, leave that country?
Best way, probably building up a business that can run for a while without you. And then setting up backup plans. So in case something like that happens, that someone else can handle or take it over for a while. So in the end, the goal is, at least for me personally, that I can basically pull myself out at any time in the business without really being involved in like daily activities. And that's what I'm aiming for, because it gives me the freedom of working on more recreational tasks that I actually enjoy more, and I know I can bring more value to something. So being able to do that and pull myself out, I know that I'm not as reliable to that, which kind of makes a lot of things easier. Obviously, it's bad if your headquarters are in a country where the blackout happens, but let's say it doesn't. In that case, I would really not worry that much. And in general, because I really love nature, I like connecting with nature. Even if it's like a week, I try to make the best out of it. If there's a possibility for me leaving, great, I'll do it. If it's whole Europe and I'm somewhere in the middle of Germany and it's very hard and I don't have enough gasoline to get somewhere, I'll just sit it out. I'll just try to do something else. I ideate, I prepare, and then I'll basically just catch up from wherever I was before.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I wouldn't be worried about the business in that case, but yeah. I think the biggest risk is your immediate surrounding, right? Like surviving that month.
Yeah, but that's when you're properly prepared. I don't think it matters. If you have your own farm, if you have your own land, whatever it is.
Think about this, right? If, other people know that you have that and they don't have it, then you're like the immediate target. I think like a month is like a long time for this. In a few days, everybody can remain polite, whatever. But once food starts running out and there's this one guy in the town or in the village who has solar, who has all the food.
You are a target, yeah. But since you know that, you gotta prepare.
I mean, okay. Yeah, maybe that's a different podcast.
Yeah.
Anyways, reasoning models. Do you think they're the future? Do you think like in a year we'll see way more reasoning models versus normal LLMs? Or do you think we'll need both?
Good question. I think it's going to be a combination. Maybe we have normal models that use reasoning. Maybe we have reasoning models that use the normal models. It's going to be just like a more complex tech stack that just kind of controls itself. Because in the end, the way data is structured and everything there is right now, we probably need both for sure. Yeah, I wouldn't say one or the other is more. It's going to be more. It's going to be really like a combination out of both.
I mean, a year ago, we basically didn't even have reasoning models. Mm-hmm. So I would probably bet on the share of AI being more reasoning. But I agree with you, like we still need fast responses. I think GPT 4.1 is amazing. So I think popularity of reasoning models will grow, but to a certain point. I wouldn't say it's going to be like 90%, maybe like 60. Rough guess, obviously. So how many AI agents have you and your team built so far?
Ooh. Thousands. Don't even know exactly, but a lot, because we tried a lot of different use cases for ourselves. If we deploy them for clients, you have to think like one use case is sometimes 5 agents, right? And these 5 agents are all there for different things. It might be even just like very unique and niche tasks. If you have like let's say a complex health office where you need to manage different doctors, they might have all the different booking systems. So you want to outsource everything of that to one agent, and another agent handles X, Y, Z. So in general, it's just a lot. And the goal with what we do is the same, like one single agent with a single prompt can handle only as much context before it starts to hallucinate.
Yeah.
And that's why you always need a lot of different kind of agents, even in one specific build or project. So yeah, it really depends. I'd say if it comes to projects itself, we've done hundreds. But yeah, mostly any of them have a lot of more agents. So it's also something that comes over time. Like if you build out one specific project for a client, let's say for appointment setting whatsoever, then they see that it works, they really like it. They come back to you and say, oh yeah, look, is it possible to build an agent to maybe call them an hour before the appointment, just to remind them? You build out another agent for that. And all of that is kind of connected. So usually you have maybe like 7 to 8 agents or even more on a project or on a whole build that you do with a client.
So in the first place, what caused you so heavily to bet on AI voice? Like when was that? Like the breaking point, you realized this is going to be the next big thing?
I think it was April last year, so April 2023. April, is it 2024? Yeah, April 2024.
Okay.
Pretty much. I kind of just did some random stuff in the voice AI space. I mean, I had a SaaS company before. We built like a competitor to Zapier for a specific niche. And when I exited that, I was like, what am I going to do now? I have so much knowledge. I want to put it somewhere. So I decided doing YouTube and just started pushing out my knowledge to kind of like establish some sort of authority. I didn't know where. And then I just saw at some point that the voice AI related things, they just got traction. So I saw a lot of good feedback, which kind of like just made me niche down and build voice agents with it. And since then, initially just running it for authority quickly became that big that we had like 14 leads a day, 20 leads a day. That was already in May. And it just like started going crazy from there. So that's when we started building up the agency and basically built those voice agents and turned that into some more of an educational program right now.
So is that right now your main business, the agency?
No, it's the educational thing.
Because you have said you have more leads than you can do, right?
We have a lot of leads, yeah. And the thing is, we decline more than 95% of them, which now probably even more than like 99. I'd say like we barely take anyone on. Our main goal is helping other people actually become independent and starting a life for themselves with their own business, and just helping them become their own boss, if you say so. And initially I was like, yeah, let's just try that. But now we're at a point where I think like it's so rewarding seeing how well it actually works for them and that they can actually achieve that. And it's just cool to see someone that was not technical at all, who learned Make.com and like workflow automation in 3 months, and now closes $8,000 to $10,000 deals a month just from working from wherever. It's just such a beautiful thing, and you see that these people are thankful as well. And that's kind of like a thriving factor of why I think education for me is more important than just starting another agency, to be honest.
So can you speak more about the life you were able to achieve, or some people following this as a result of doubling down on AI voice and this remote business?
Yeah, I mean, I had already a lot of experience before that because I was running businesses and I was doing many things like over 10 years ago. Now I'm at a level where we just started an agency. We scaled it from maybe like, 10,000 a month to 50,000 or 60,000 a month. And always have been at like 30K bottom line, which is good per month, which is great. So it kind of brought some sort of stability, which I just knew based on the amount of leads we get that we can just not serve that all. Because the videos I do on my channel, they were very general. They basically cover what voice AI technology is in the first place. So you can imagine you get all kinds of leads. And every time we start a project in a specific niche, and if it's not a project you've already covered, you got to start from scratch. And it just takes a lot of time. So we took on a lot of projects, we made good money. It's very, very hard to scale. And still we had to decline so many projects. So we decided, okay, let's just do that. Let's just start an educational program, educate people, and outsource leads to them so we can at least serve them so the market grows, because obviously it's going to be beneficial for us as well. And that's when we started this program, and now basically developed a platform that we can use to connect leads and our vetted contractors together. So our students have the possibility being introduced to leads, to actual leads, to build our projects, which helps us to get the most complicated and hardest steps for a business owner, getting the first lead.
Yeah.
Because once they have the experience of talking with a lead, they don't not only learn how to interact with a lead and actually close them, start a project, they also gather data. They gather data which gives them the confirmation or the possibility of creating a solution that they can start niching down in and make a lot of money and actually productize it. Because that's the main thing that's missing. Understanding or getting data on a specific problem that helps someone to build a product out of it. And with us basically connecting the leads and the contractors together, we can achieve that. And yeah, for me, it's just such a nice thing seeing the people succeed. And I really, really enjoy that, which is why I'd like to even dive in deeper in the future.
So is that like a custom SaaS for connecting the students and the leads?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, it's
When
called...
did you start that? How does that work?
It's called Workless.ai.
Okay.
And the goal is basically of having leads being able to go into the platform, create their very own project. So let's say you have the need for a voice agent. You can just go onto the platform, you can select voice agent, you define your project, what you need. You can post it. And then our vetted talent, so basically a set of contractors from our course or our program that we trained where we know they are capable of delivering something, we can introduce them to the project so they can see it. Everyone has a chance to comment on it, basically share their expertise, show off about their skill set, etc., what they did. And then you can see all of them. And if there's anyone that you really like, you can just hire them, which then just exchanges the contact details, and you can then just start working with them directly. So because it's part of our course and we kind of like finance it through that, it's completely for free and basically no limitations for anyone to use.
So you're basically competing with like Upwork and Fiverr.
Pretty much, yeah, but just specifically for the AI space.
Yeah, but I mean, AI space is growing rapidly.
Yeah, it is, yeah. But we just focused on chatbots and voice agents.
But as we discussed, every business will need voice agents.
Yeah, hopefully.
so like, what's the goal? You know, like paint the best case scenario. Like, how is that your main play to scale the SaaS?
Actually, we haven't even thought about it. For us, it's mainly of helping the people to get their first leads because that helps us with the program, which is kind of going together with our goal of helping people become independent. And that, at least for now, is the main goal. So the SaaS is more like a side thing that we use to enable our students get more experience and become more successful.
Okay, so on the topic of like, you know, what kind of life you can achieve, can you give us like a concrete example of freedom, like the levels of freedom people can achieve if they're making 5, 7, 8K a month, you know, remotely? Because I think a lot of people, if they're stuck to a specific city, in a specific job for 20 plus years, it's kind of hard to see what's possible.
It is very hard to see what's possible. And it also really depends on what the person really wants and what they're down for doing. Because if they live in London, for example, it's a crazy expensive city. So the cost of living is a lot higher than if you go, for example, to Thailand or Vietnam or Bali, right? But if you're down of changing your life and you want to have some more, just some different environment, maybe some different people, and like Bali, for example, it's very entrepreneurial. It's cool to see. So just knowing that the possibility is there of moving to a different country and starting a new life. I mean, obviously, sometimes it's hard with the family situation and everything around that. But having the flexibility of even just working from home, if you say you don't like the job, or transiting, commuting with a train is hard, complex, loud, noisy, expensive. You can just shape your life in a more optimized and cheaper way. And yeah, there's just tons of stuff that goes into it, and it really depends on what that person wants. But from what I've seen with people that are starting out, first they want to get the stability. They often have like this whole thing running as a side thing, and once they see it's becoming stable and they can actually make money with this, they start moving out and start traveling. That's the first thing. I did the same thing. I just started traveling in the beginning, seeing different countries, trying to understand whether or not that's a place that I could potentially spend more time at. And when I like something, I just stay longer. And that's just that freedom that I personally want to have, because you can trial different things. You can open your mind to different cultures, different interests, etc. And that is something that a job like this enables, because all you need is an internet connection, like we say, right?
Yeah, a laptop with internet.
Correct.
That's all you need. So actually, I would like to expand on that idea, right? So first of all, moving to a different country, I would say it's easier than people think. Obviously, you can say, you know, people have families, dogs, stuff like that. It becomes harder.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people who have overthink this decision massively. And again, once you pull the trigger, it's not that hard usually. Like, it's mostly like, what if, you know, fear of the unexpected, friction, perceived friction.
Yeah.
But like, if you move to a country where everybody speaks English, you're fine. Obviously it's different if you speak to a country where you have to learn the language. That's much harder. But if you move to a big city like Dubai, there's companies that make it super easy. So I would like to if someone is thinking about moving countries, I would just say it's probably easier than you think. And the second thing I would like to say is the power of changing your environment. This is something that few people understand. This is perhaps one of the best decisions someone can make, right? Let's say someone is like morbidly obese. They live in a house with 5 other obese people. Like the best thing you can do is not buy a gym membership. The best thing you can do is buy a flight ticket to a different part of the country, move in with people who run every day or are bodybuilders, whatever, and like change your environment completely. And that will just make it almost impossible to be obese or whatever. You can apply this to any situation, right? So I think the power of changing the environment and the power of changing the incentives is huge, because you can literally tweak incentives, for one of your employees, and that person could be from an underperformer to an overperformer. If you reward them for how they perform. Same thing with the environment. So I think if someone wants to make a drastic change in their life, one of the best things they can do is, as you said, travel out there, go to a different city, different country, ideally, because that also removes any environmental cues and societal pressures. And it's much easier to establish new habits and start from scratch.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's just important to emphasize again how important it is to change your environment.
Yeah,
it sounds so easy to be said, but the importance that goes with it's insane, because there's so many things that we don't actively think about it. Right? If you live with obese people, even if you don't want to, you automatically start adapting because you see what they do and you just do very similar things. It just naturally comes. So making sure you're in the right environment is one of the most crucial things ever.
Yeah, I think this is perhaps one of the highest leverage ways to spend your time. Designing your environment so that achieving your goals is as effortless as possible. Because if you want to become a millionaire, well, if you move into a house with 5 other entrepreneurs who work 16 hours a day, sooner or later you will be a millionaire. It's just inevitable, right? Because everybody has good work ethic. Everybody, wakes up early, whatever, does the right things. Same with getting healthy. Same with learning a new language, right? If you want to learn French and you live in a country where nobody speaks French, versus if you move to, well, maybe not Paris, it's more like Africa, but some French-speaking city where everybody speaks French, you're going to learn that language way faster, right? So again, changing your environment can be very uncomfortable because comfort zone is from a familiar environment, but it's one of the highest leverage things I've done in my life, and I would highly recommend it to anybody who wants to change their life. No, I don't care how old you are. It's no matter how difficult it is. If you want to make a big change, it's worth it always. Also, you mentioned the Thailand, Vietnam, Bali strategy. I think for young people this is so OP because, again, if you set up in Dubai or somewhere where you have next to 0% tax, and then you go to a country where you can live off $500 a month, it strips off any risk basically from entrepreneurship. So if you're a complete beginner, it might take you 2-3 years to get to 10K a month, whatever. But if you do the strat of setting up in a low tax zone and then moving to Vietnam and living for $500 a month, you cannot fail basically. I think that's such an empowering idea, For me, I know even if everything went to shit and somehow everybody who I knew in Czech Republic died and I had no family members, no friends, I can always move to Vietnam, live on $500 a month and just make it work.
Exactly, yeah. It gives you so much more flexibility and opportunities.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But that's the value of traveling. If you never visit these countries, you don't realize just how possible it is and just how good of a life you can have for $500 or $1,000 a month.
Exactly. It's just a way of not seeing it as holidays.
Yes.
Yeah. If you have a good job, you don't really need to take holidays.
Exactly.
Place, right?
I mean, this is another crazy difference between people who hate their job and people who just work every day. I don't want to take a day off. I want to work every day. The worst thing I can do is go on a beach and lie there for 6 hours. I cannot imagine more pain for 6 hours. Obviously I can, but I'm saying that I'm saying that as an example. This is perhaps the biggest thing in terms of the freedom, right? Instead of being something where you dread going to the office Monday. I don't even know what day it is. Just every day is the same for me. And I think that's one of the best things.
It's awesome. Yeah. Once you get into this flow, it's very hard. I'm the same. If you go to the beach, I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
So I gotta start doing something.
I think the beach is so overrated. The sand gets everywhere. The salt water is sticky. Especially here, it's 40, 45 degrees. Your head doesn't work in that temperature. Yeah. Anyways, AI, job loss. When do you think we will see real job loss? When we can feel it. Do you think that's coming 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? And what will it look like? Obviously, it's impossible to say exactly, but what are your thoughts, general direction?
Yeah, I've tried to like push the topic away for a
Why?
long time. Just because I don't think for us it is as important.
Well, yeah, the entrepreneurs are
Right.
not afraid.
Yeah, that's why we don't really put too much value towards it. But first, I think we just have like a shift in jobs.
Okay.
We do different things. We are more the one smart. They will just turn into some sort of managers of basically managing AI infrastructure, maybe improving it. We're always gonna have anything that is physical. I think we have for a very long time. Anything that actually needs physical contact, as well as like math related or physics related, we still gonna have a lot of human touch. So there are some areas where I think not much is gonna change, but a lot of things, especially for the low paid jobs, they're gonna be automated, which means that these people need some sort of switch into seeing AI as an opportunity to do something else. So while I think it's definitely gonna remove jobs that we have nowadays, I think we're gonna get a lot of new ones as well that are probably just handle different things. And yeah, I mean, to be honest, at some point I'd probably be even happy if we'd have no work to do anymore, right? Because that would shift the whole mindset of people to start doing things by themselves anymore. Because what are they gonna do? If you have nothing to do, you're bored, you need to do something. It's just normal human behavior. And I think it makes us just switch the way we do things and we interact with it and basically start building up something, whatever that's gonna look like. But we gotta do something. It's impossible not to.
But before we get to that point, what do you think would be like the first signs or like first industries or first types of jobs? Like you mentioned the easily repetitive ones, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's already happening, right? If we talk
Like
about voice
translators,
AI,
for example.
translators, for example, narrators, it's a very big one. Especially also now with emotional intelligence, anyone that deals with like depressed patients or basically patient support, maybe even on hotlines where there's a lot of like emotions involved, those are gonna be super helpful. So those people are necessarily, I wouldn't even say people are not necessary. That specific task is not necessary anymore, which I think just makes those people switch to something else.
It's like elevator, what is it? Elevator boy, elevator assistant.
Elevator.
Yeah, like exactly. Nobody thinks about that as a job anymore. It's more of a task, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's really the shift is instead of labeling that as a job, because then it puts all these like, morals and ethics, like, oh no, people are going to lose that job. If you go anywhere, you can, go into a mall and see a lot of people just standing around. Any business at a certain size just has people like they're around. So much inefficiency, right?
Yeah.
So instead of labeling that as jobs, it's more like a task, right? Instead of a cashier, it's like a person processing the payment from a customer. Boom, easy with AI. So,
correct.
And that unlocks like a lot of, first of all, it makes the services cheaper. But second of all, it unlocks like a higher creativity, higher agency jobs for those people. Like one of the most miserable things I would say is like those, videos from China where like people are like stamping one, like, the repetitive action, 8 hours, 10 hours a day. That's like soul crushing, right?
Yeah.
So that is like a good example of jobs that humans shouldn't do. It's just like terrible physical labor, repetitive, they get some long-term pains, health issues, and it's like absolutely soul crushing.
Yeah.
Most people would agree like, okay, let's automate that. But I think with every year, maybe every decade, there'll be the Overton window will shift where people see more and more of these jobs as just tasks that why would a human do it if LLM is better? But then humans are better at inventing these connections. Like for example, there's a great thought exercise, I think it's from Dvarkesh Patel, is where all the knowledge that AI has, even if you took like 1% over 1% and put that into a human, that human would come up with so many new inventions, connections, hypotheses that current models, even the reasoning models, just cannot do. So I think the creativity problem is completely unsolved in current LLM paradigm.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of new people will be like poets or inventors or, people just creative thinkers.
True. I mean, the thing is like, there's always something like a supervised and unsupervised network, right? So the unsupervised, you just drop random stuff in and you get some sort of outcome, which, yeah, we can argue it's always human generated. So there's always some human touch to whatever we do in the technology space. But I think if you just randomly let it generate things that maybe even seem more random to us, even though they're not random, like what's random in the universe, you can also discuss that, right?
Yeah.
So there's probably the potential of AI getting there. The question is just how is that actually going to work out? Because especially like in unsupervised scenarios, you still preferably want some sort of feedback because you want some sort of outcome. So yeah, it's interesting. I do think we're gonna have that as well, that we have like a combination of humans being artistic and doing things, while using that again to just kind of train AI. Yeah, I wonder if that even turns into some sort of parallel behavior between AI and humans.
In what way?
One is training the other and providing the other. So we basically give input to AI, while AI gives us back productivity or efficiency.
Potentially. I mean, in the near term, it will definitely be a human with AI will defeat just AI or just humans. Because like the difference currently between an AI agent and a human is so different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the AI can process millions lines of text infinitely faster than a human, but a human can set up a new credit card while AI can't. So I think the combination of those will be absolutely the next 5 years. That will be the combination. But then again, we can go 20 years where maybe all of the work is done by AI and the human are just like, what if we tried that? And then the AI conducts like experiment. Just like the random spontaneous connections, unless a new architecture is developed that can do that as well.
Exactly, yeah. Because right now it's developed for humans, right? That's going to change.
Let's talk about the importance of choosing a niche. This is something that you're very passionate about and you stress in like almost every video.
Yep.
So what is like what happens when people don't choose a niche? Let's start there.
It's okay as well, to be honest. And I think niches to a certain extent, at least in the beginning, if you have no niche, they are more overrated and it's more of like a guideline or some sort of guidance. Because I think the biggest issue for us, what we've seen with people, is keeping them accountable and making sure that they push through hard times and just stay focused on one thing. That's the hardest thing. People just naturally drop off when they see opportunities, which is something that we're still figuring out how we can reduce that, but it's just a natural behavior. So having a niche helps you to just stay more focused. It gives you some sort of purpose to push through a hard time and basically work towards one goal. Now, while I say niche is good and it's not mandatory, like you should not marry that niche, meaning that you definitely work towards one specific thing and you see if it works out. Working out meaning you post maybe content about it, you do anything about like outreach whatsoever. But it naturally happens that even if you target one specific niche, especially if you don't really know that niche so well or you don't understand the pain points, that people come to you from a different angle. So it might be that if you promote a solution, like a specific solution, like a lead qualification agent, and you market that to hotels or whatsoever. But let's say someone from like a plumber sees that, for example, and thinks, oh yeah, cool, they can do something with voice AI, and they come back to you. It doesn't mean you should completely neglect them. It means like, okay, you actually get some lead. You get some person that is interested. So in that case, you just switch the niche without thinking about it, and you build up that solution. Because the most important thing you do from the beginning is gathering data, so you understand the actual pain points and what you can serve. Because once you have that, then it's just, you have the world. You have everything to understand on how to market it, what people really care about, how much value it actually provides them, how you can price it. That basically gives you everything you need to build an offer. And then you just switch everything towards that specific offer and you start marketing that offer because you have the data to prove that this thing works. So that's why I say in the beginning, a niche is not important, but once you have a product and you have data on it and you developed it and you see that it recurringly sells itself, that's the time when you double down on niches and just go full in.
Because then you can craft a much better offer. You can, charge more.
Everything, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also, I would say like another thing that I would say sometimes can be true, but a lot of times it's just a limiting belief, is that people say like, oh, I have no experience, or like, I don't know what niche to choose. I have no experience in any niche. Like everyone, if you're like more than 20 years old, you have some experience somewhere, right? You were in high school, you were better at some subjects than others. You took some courses, your parents were in some job and you know something about that. Everybody has some experience to start somewhere. Yeah. But to your point, at the start, it's almost like starting is everything. Getting started, exactly. Getting out there, getting the volumes, and you will never know when you end up, in a year, So, but at the start, like people just obsess, like what is the best niche, what is the best offer, what is the best opportunity. It's almost like if you just blindly start it, like try to like lower your IQ by 20, 30 points, just start, pretend you're dumb and just put in the volume. Sooner or later, you'll start to notice these patterns. Like this type of customer is very difficult to deal with and cancels after 1 month. This type of customer always is easy to sell and stays for 6 months. Go here.
Yeah. You know what really hurts people when they hear it?
What?
When you tell them that someone that is more stupid, or let's say they have maybe lower IQ points, can make a lot more money than the one that's smart.
That's true.
Why? Because they just stay consistent. That's literally all it needs.
I guess all of us have friends that are like, geniuses in math or whatever that have like pretty terrible lives on paper.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of it's just like repetitive. It's not that hard to identify the correct actions, especially with AI, right? Like if you can just be consistent with the right actions and avoid the bad things, like avoid doing drugs, avoid like ruining your sleep, basics, you can get really far.
Exactly, yeah. That's why like you don't need to be smart. If you know a problem, you can be like waking up every day eating your garbage food. You can still make a lot of money, right? You can have zero life motivation. If you stay dedicated and you solve one specific thing, you can make money.
Yeah, I mean, if you just do like 100 sales calls a day, you're probably going to be pretty well off.
Yeah, and you cannot imagine how low the boundaries for some people are. When I hear, I don't make any sales, you ask them how much calls they do. Maybe like 5 a week.
Same with YouTube.
Yeah, exactly.
Like on YouTube, there are so many people who just upload once a month. It's like, well, listen, you have like 50 subscribers, you should be uploading daily. It's like, I don't know what videos to make. I don't know. Well, of course, like that's the point. You need to be uploading a lot. You need to put in the reps. And so many people think like, okay, but why would I see like, Mr. Beast takes 14 days to make a great video. It's like, you don't know what a great video is, Mm-hmm. In those 14 days, you could upload 7 videos, every other day. And then you would have way more data. Maybe one of these gets 200 views while you're averaging 40. So it's the same thing with everywhere. Like, yeah, it's a good thing to say. Sometimes you need to hurt people's egos a bit. Like if you were less intelligent, you would make more money. It's like, fuck,
Exactly, it hurts. It has to hurt sometimes.
Okay, so what are your thoughts, completely different topic, what are your thoughts on marriage?
Depends in front of whom, but generally marriage, it's a good thing.
And do you recommend like doing the church marriage or classical government marriage? Any specific tips are there?
Yeah, church is great. I would preferably never do a governmental marriage. Generally,
so what are the main differences though? Because like you can say like, you still have a ceremony and stuff like that, but like in terms of the legal side, I guess depends on which country, right? But like in general,
yeah, the biggest thing is probably liability.
Okay.
I mean, that's from my perspective, but I would say for a normal people's perspective, it's especially in Germany, it's tax reasons, right? You fall into a different tax class, so you pay less taxes. So that is one of the main reasons why a lot of people in Germany like to marry. Sorry?
When you're married or when you're not married?
When you're married, you fall into a different tax class.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then you basically pay less taxes.
Interesting.
So yeah, that's one of the things of the incentives why it makes sense to marry if you really plan on staying in Germany. That's at least one of the things they get you with. Generally, I think it's difficult to say because I would even say it probably starts with the right partner. I think a lot of people just don't choose the right partner, right? But that's a topic for itself. But let's say you actually have the perfect partner and everything goes super, super well. In that case, a marriage brings more liability, which I think is going to hurt you in the long term more than not doing it.
This is actually interesting because not many people realize that not having a prenup in a traditional government marriage incentivizes the woman to leave. Mm-hmm. Think about this. In 10 to 15 years, if you have like a really bad argument and you have tens of millions of dollars, all that woman has to do is leave you and she gets half.
Mm-hmm.
So like not having a prenup incentivizes her to leave. So few people realize this. You can set up even contractual constructs to secure yourself. Because the thing is, in a marriage that is not contractual, you need to do a lot more with trust. Okay.
Right? So, meaning you need to have the right partner, and the right partner is something very, very hard to choose, which only a few people really ever figure out. So it's very hard to say. I think it's a very special way of thinking, in my opinion, and you definitely need to bring a lot of trust along. But I would say being married in front of God or whoever you want to, if it's church related, great. It's a good thing to do. But from a governmental side, it just brings more liability, and that's something I just don't want. Not in the sense of that I don't trust my partner or I wouldn't give them anything in the world. The thing is just because I don't want to have the liability of limitations from a governmental side. You can imagine if you're getting sued or something happens to you, it's not just you that's affected, it's also your partner. So, and especially given in a world we are living in and rules change. I mean, obviously, I always try my best interests ever to do things on the legal side. But in Germany, you're basically already doing something illegal if you park your car on the wrong side of the street on a forest, right? You can basically breathe and do something illegal in general. So, and because it's man-made constructs, they can be changed all the time. So it's very hard to say what is actually illegal and what not. So people can abuse that if they want to. And that happens to a lot of billionaires as well, right? You've seen that they have massive influence and they try to get them down by finding some weird reasons that maybe look okay on the paper, but they actually completely unrelated. And it's just a way of like protecting myself and protecting my partner, making sure that in case something happens to me, that they are not affected and vice versa. So it's more like a security thing than anything else.
So like decentralizing the, I guess, surface area plus removing the government from the equation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because in my opinion, binding a partner to you as well, like on a paper, it's not really a good thing. Like if I choose a partner, I want to be with a partner because they want to be with me, right? So the boundary makes sense if you say, okay, yeah, the woman falls into a traditional role of maybe taking care of the kids, maybe running the household, etc. Because then you are the one providing, right? And in case you separate, it makes sense that the woman can sustain herself to continue that life. Like nowadays, I know that's for the majority of people not really the case anymore. Like the woman wants to be independent, wants to do her own stuff, which is, again, a topic for another day. But generally, I think if you trust the partner and if you are honest and you have the trust, you can have contracts set up that could handle something similar, but on your very own terms without the government being able to enforce it, which I think is just more important.
It's basically thinking outside the box.
Exactly.
You can still do all these like protections, worst case scenario, so both parties feel represented without needing to involve the government.
Exactly. And especially on an international level, the way it's going to move, some of the contracts are not even accepted in some of the countries, right? They're invalid. So depends what you want to do. But for me, it's just more efficient having that done by ourselves.
Another powerful idea you said is like everyone is kind of breaking the law all the time, Maybe it's not a serious law, maybe it's like a speeding ticket or parking on the wrong side or this and that, but there are so many different laws and regulations and just bureaucracy, levels of bureaucracy. Like every Western country has like literally millions of laws. So it's impossible for any person, let alone a team of lawyers, to know all of them, right? So this is, I think, another big issue with bureaucracy and this multi-level government, where obviously you have big governments in Europe. Most countries have like huge governments compared to what it should be, but then you have another layer, which is the EU, which is like another government on top of government, which is just disgusting.
Yeah.
Which means that if they want to get you, even if you're the most by-the-book guy ever, never cross the speed limit, nothing, you probably broke some law. You probably didn't pay some health insurance, you paid it late, now with penalties stacking up 5% a month. Like something you've probably broken because, again, there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of different laws and regulations and, compliances that exist, that this is like a way for the system to win. It's a way for the system to protect itself. Mm-hmm. Because if someone, goes out there, someone who wants to, change the system or, make big changes that people who are running the system don't like, all you need to do is like find a few laws he broken, boom, jail.
Yeah,
easy.
Pretty much.
So yeah, that's another issue with big governments and centralized control.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate.
Do you have any unconventional health tips?
Ooh. I mean, one of the ones that seems pretty obvious for me, but isn't for others, is that when you move out of Germany, you pay maybe less than half of the amount of health insurance that you would pay when you're in Germany. Because in Germany, it's required to have it in Ireland.
Same in Czech Republic.
Yeah.
Disgusting.
Exactly. You've seen the difference, right? It's massive.
Yeah.
And the amount of services we get are so much better.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest things that I think I want to give along to people. And especially if you can use a country like this where you can just go out and you have healthcare treatments in like a blink of an eye. You can just get a doctor come to your house. Try doing this in Europe. You need to wait a month until you get an appointment. Crazy. Yeah,
I just got like a few months ago, I got a blood test, full panel. Lady came to my house, 10 minutes, took, a few vials of blood, boom. Within a few days, I got the results. So easy.
Yeah.
But in these like, post-communist European countries, where the socialist system is like technically good to protect the bottom 10%, everybody else gets screwed because the service is so terrible. And I think the idea of your doctor not even knowing your name is crazy. Like if you have a doctor and the worst part is like you're paying more, like as you're successful, you get punished because you're paying more and more in the mandatory health insurance, but the service you get is the same. It's not like you're getting the best doctor in the city or in the country. No, you're getting just a random one that doesn't even know your name that has 500 other patients.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people in America like to hate on the American system, but the other systems are not perfect either. Like it might be cheaper, but it's also like quality is worse.
Correct.
But ideally, you don't need the doctor. So, like, what are your main health tips to, prevent needing healthcare?
Don't consume sugar. Don't consume high omega-6 oils.
Okay.
That's, I think, two of the biggest ones. Like anything high glycemic, you just don't wanna avoid.
What is like an example of a food that has high omega-6?
Vegetable oils, right?
Okay.
So anything that oxidizes quickly, or that's heat treated. Definitely anything that's hydrogenated. So any hydrogenated fats, our body doesn't even know what the heck that is. If you avoid that and in combination with sugar, that's probably the best thing you can do. Like sugar, I think is one of the most underrated drugs that we actually have.
Why underrated?
Because they don't think about it.
Okay.
I mean, we would. Everyone considers sugar like something normal, something you give to your kids, to everyone. So they don't even see it as a drug. They see it as just some like ingredient. But the fact that it's incredibly addictive and really, really messes up with your body, they just don't see that. And especially understandable because it just brings long-term effects. It's very rarely that you see short-term effects. But yeah, then when you end up with things like diabetes or insulin resistance, it's a whole different story.
It's very interesting because for the last 3 or 4 weeks, I basically cut out almost all sugar, and now I have like zero craving for it. Like I don't even want to eat anything that has like tons of sugar.
Yeah.
Obviously I'm fine with like a fruit, but I'm talking like sugar-heavy meals. Just like it's completely like, I don't know. It feels weird now that I basically only eat like steak and eggs.
Yeah, it's the best thing.
It's amazing like how your body adapts, and then you can, even if you have like something with a bit too much sugar, you can literally feel it, like repulsed by it.
Correct, yeah. I mean, one thing that actually is pretty decent is dark chocolate. So anything above like 85% upwards, even if it still has 15% of sugar, you have a lot of fat that you eat it with, right? So the insulin response you have is going to be a lot lower. So you don't have the big spikes, which is great. So that's a nice alternative on, even if you get sugar cravings, you can keep them pretty much down by just eating some dark chocolate. And to be honest, dark chocolate anyways, I love it. I know many say it often has heavy metals and stuff like that. I mean, if you don't eat like a day 3 bars, I think you're okay.
Yeah.
But it's the same with everything. I would also not fully cut out carbs or something like that. I believe in a hybrid lifestyle. I mean, we grew up like this, and our body can take a lot of stuff, and it's probably the worst just specializing in one thing and letting him ignore everything else, because when you then take it, it's going to be the worst, right? So there are some things that I just personally don't do, like drink alcohol, etc. But if it comes to bread, I mean, I eat bread, for example. I just don't eat it every day, and definitely not with like a lot of sugar. I cut out all the sweet drinks, and all of that brought massive health improvements, like massive. And it's measurable health improvements. Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy that like all you have to do is kind of look back what existed 100 years ago or 150 years ago. And if that food didn't exist, probably don't need it, It's
yeah,
like
150 is like it's like, you can go like 10,000 or probably even further.
But like, people cannot imagine 10,000 years. But if you like say 150, like, okay, maybe they can imagine it easier. My point is that if it didn't exist, 100, 200 years ago, you probably shouldn't eat it. Because our bodies, have adapted through evolution through billions of years, right?
Yeah.
So 50 years is nothing on evolutionary timescale. So like inventing all of these like chemicals and compounds that, again, only in the last 50, 70 years have been around, I think that same applies to a lot of societal norms,
Yeah.
Because like there's a lot of things that have been true for centuries and millennia that only in the last few decades have been changing. On average, it's bad. Because if it has been proven to work for 3,000 years, and then in the last few decades it's being changed, perhaps there's a reason why every civilization did it,
Exactly. Unfortunately, it's a lot of lobbyism, right? Changing the diet to make money somewhere.
And healthy person is a lost client.
Exactly.
For a big pharma.
Doesn't help him, yeah.
So what are your thoughts on Western Europe? Because I think everybody with 2 eyes is seeing that it's going down. Are you hopeful for like the Eastern European countries more?
I love the Eastern European countries. It's one of my favorite places to be. I wouldn't say about like the political situation. It's probably worse, I'd say, because it's generally just worse. There's a lot of more monopoly again, and a lot of more lobbyism happening. But I just like the people a lot more. They're more friendly, they're more open, they're more real. Like even in Germany, it's sometimes difficult. It's like very conservative, at least from the areas where I'm from. So the interactions are somewhat weird. Like, I don't know. I cannot really resonate with it myself. So it's hard to explain. I just generally feel more happy in like the eastern states. And also for the nature. Like nature is great. Food is really, really good. And I would say they just have the generally more traditional sort of lifestyle, right? And belief system, which is a big influence, a big point for me.
I think a big part of that is because they experienced like 50 years of communism.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't take these things for granted. Well, it's easy, like some, liberal 21-year-old student in California, it's easy for her to be Marxist. It's much harder if, your parents come from a post-communist country where they can tell you firsthand what it was like.
Exactly, yeah. It's harder for them to understand, for sure.
So if you had to change like 2 or 3 things about the way Europe is running to put it in a better place, what would they be?
I'd probably start changing tax laws to bring in more wealth into the country.
Yeah.
And I definitely make people work instead of paying them for being in Germany. That's, I think, the 2 biggest ones that I do like immediately. And I didn't need to think about it. It came just off the spot.
Exactly. That's my point. Like the fundamentals. I'm not claiming running a country is easy. Obviously there's difficult parts, but the fundamentals are so obvious. Like I am 100% certain that if we took a random guy from a street in Germany, put him in charge, he would do a better job than the current bureaucrats. Because like the fundamentals are so simple. Like obviously if you pay people to do nothing, they have no incentives. Again, incentives and environment, they have no incentives to benefit society. But if you think about the way America was built with immigration, if someone moved to America with nothing, they had to learn the language and they had to start working. Like the Irish immigrants, for example, they were like super productive and they were instantly trying to get the American dream. But the American dream wasn't like social benefits, free money, you don't have to learn the language, just spam kids and you're gonna get paid.
Correct.
It's crazy how like setting up the incentives in the right way is so obvious, but that's what I say. Like I think the people are legit evil. It's crazy because everybody understands these things, yet they're still happening.
They're happening all around Europe, yeah. The thing is, in the beginning, I was always thinking maybe it had to do with the wars in our past as a German country.
Okay.
But I think it's not even the case anymore because you can see it in mostly any country.
Yeah, look at Ireland. Ireland has a clean past. Yeah. They didn't colonize anybody. In fact, they were colonized by England, and it's getting absolutely destroyed by immigration. And all the immigrants are getting free money. Yeah. And the Irish people are getting nothing.
It's terrible.
We'll see where this leads. Maybe there needs to be like 1 or 2 countries that fall, that completely fail, for the other ones to wake up. Because there's still a lot of people like, I recently had a taxi driver who like said like, oh, if the immigrants weren't there, the economy would collapse. It's like, they believe the mainstream narrative so much that it's kind of hard to, put them in, like, it's hard to wake them up. So I think maybe there needs to be like one country, maybe UK is probably closest to collapse, that goes completely down for people of the other countries that see like, okay, I was in London 10 years ago, it was beautiful. Now I go and I got stabbed and my phone got stolen. So like maybe that needs to happen for people to wake up, because if people are comfortable, then there's not going to be any change. Yeah,
but it's very hard to make them wake up, I think. I mean, I see there are riots and everything happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's even somehow sad that we are not acting more on it. But to be honest, like from my perspective, what I'm thinking like how much I can contribute to it. And to be honest, I think just being in the country and trying to support them from there's nothing that I would see as like a viable thing. And I'll probably even say as like if you have a specific purpose and you try to involve yourself a lot with those topics, they backfire a lot. So if you go into something like that, not full time but partially, I think it hurts you a lot more. Because you deal with a lot of negativity. Yeah, you get a lot of because you're pretty controversial, right, about this topic. Like a lot of people that listen to that, they're not necessarily brainwashed or something like that, but they just don't believe these things the same way because they don't even understand that there's a different belief that you can have. And I think in that case, it probably makes them think that you're unethical, maybe in some way, even though other countries just manage to do it that way. And you can always phrase things around, and I think that is one of the reasons why it also works so well, because different topics are phrased to people in different ways. What actually isn't as worse might be made more worse, or quite of the opposite. So yeah, like exposing myself to the topics. I mean, obviously, I'd like to have a Germany like we had it back then, where things are easy, where things are safe, and less affected by this wokeism and gender stuff. Because that's one of the things I really still don't understand. But yeah, it's very hard for me to involve myself into it because I just know how much negativity it brings along.
Yeah, I mean, I have some solutions to this, but nothing I can say on the podcast. So one idea that I want to end on is that it's kind of amazing that there is not a massive revolution in every single country where the government prioritizes foreign immigrants over the native population.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. A government prioritizing people from outside, giving them benefits, free money, protection, everything, over the native population. It's kind of crazy that there isn't like a mass revolution in each of those countries. Yet it's basically every Western European country.
Yeah, because they just accept it.
I mean, I guess that's the power of education, you know? Again, going back to the bias of the models, if shifting from TV and cable, whatever, going to social media, going into interactive AI, that is going to be the way people get their, you know, mandatory brainwashing, aka the news.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the future of, you know, we really need to make sure these models are as unbiased as possible, as open source as possible. Otherwise, people will just believe everything that people in power want to believe.
Yeah, but that's governmental control, right? They control media, they control the population.
But if you look at it, like, this is different with generations. Because, like, you look at boomers, they just believe everything on TV. I think Gen Z, which is my generation, is much better. Because, like, they're more skeptical. All of them use social media, so they can, you know, look at different points of view. I don't know, I'm much more hopeful in this current generation of, like, making any change. Otherwise, the old generations, I think they're, like, you know, there's a great quote by Napoleon, do not trust a man over 40 during a revolution. Like, you know, because things are changing so fast. Yeah. And most people over 40 are so, like, hard set in their ways that they cannot even consider, as you said, changing an idea. If someone is, you know, living in, like, Connecticut on a 200K, 300K a year salary, and they hear us talking about what's happening in Europe, they probably don't even know what's happening. And the crazy part is that, like, you know, you're from East Germany, I'm from East Czech Republic. We're from relatively good areas. There are much worse areas, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And yeah, I don't know, there's people who, like, live in Paris or live in, like, London, and they don't do anything. It's amazing to me.
If you think about, like, why that's the case, right? Is it because they're just comfortable in the existing environment? Because there's always this nice example of having the fleas in the glass. I'm not sure if you've seen it.
Oh, yeah, that's amazing.
Right? And I think that's basically what happens, right?
Yeah.
Because if you only live in a certain environment, like, even the smallest little change just makes it a little bit better, but it still keeps you down. So you have less incentive of doing something else if you're always in that bubble, which I think is, like, changing the environment could potentially just open those doors for you. So maybe that is one of the ways on how we can promote things, basically make people move. But again, it brings them out of the country.
But again, like, once we have, you know, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars, like, don't you want to, like, return back to the homeland and, you know, where we came from and make sure that place is good? Because, like, I wouldn't want to live in Dubai or, like, Singapore with, like, billions and just chill on the beach, knowing that Europe is going to shit. I just couldn't do that.
Yeah, same. But if moving back is an option, probably it depends on how safe it is. That's, I would say, like, number one priority or criteria. And obviously, I think with that amount of money, I try my best to see what I can improve. Because then it's more like a game of not building up wealth, but building up a society and economy that is actually worth living.
Yeah.
And
it needs a new system.
Exactly,
the entire system is rotten to the core.
And the entire system to be changed is going to be incredibly hard. But maybe we have the power with AI. Who knows?
Well, I mean, it's definitely people like us, you know, the entrepreneurs who are problem solvers, who should be looking at this instead of just, like, trying to buy a Lambo.
Yeah. I'd love use AI form a new society. Be awesome.
All right. I think we have 2 minutes left, so let's wrap it up. Appreciate you having on the podcast, Jannis.
Of course.
Great
Thanks for having me.
Let's do it again next year or 6 months.
Yeah, we can do so.